No. No, I mean, it will go to me. That's fine. Yeah, so for public comment. All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and, if everybody is ready, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners on Monday, August 8th, 2022 to order. I am Chris Pompelli, and I will go ahead and leave the floor open for board member announcements, if there are any. Do any board members have an announcement? Okay. Well, seeing that, we will go ahead and move right into public comment. So we have a few people who have signed up. So try to keep respectful of everybody's time. We'll not cut you off, but let's shoot for a maximum of 5 minutes, and I will give you a rough warning on that. So let's go ahead and start with Shelley Rich. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm seeing that here. Excuse me. Pardon me, folks. Let me actually.
So I'd ask if there was anybody who's
go ahead.
Speaking that is not on the agenda.
That's right. Anybody speaking not on the agenda. Sorry. Just making sure that we have that. Anybody else? Okay. Well, very good. No public comment for today. Thank you very much for the save, Troy, because I was about to, go down that road. So, okay, we, I believe, have a quorum today. So I believe that means we have a set of minutes from February, June, and July of 2022. Has everyone on the board had a chance to review the minutes? Does anybody have any question on the minutes? Okay, seeing that, I will go ahead and make a motion that we accept staff's recommended action to approve, sign, and file the minutes for the February 14th, June 13th, and July 11th regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it.
I'd like to give lots of credit to Jackie Oots, who put the minutes together. When we were so far behind, we didn't have staff. Penny was not able to keep up with us because she was doing 3 people's jobs. Jackie, once we hired her, she was able to get a majority of this stuff done. So much thanks to her.
Of course. Very thankful for all of our staff. All of the hard work that they do makes this process so much easier. So thank you very much to all of our staff. Going to roll right into new items for consideration. Why don't you go ahead and take this over then, Troy, and just lead us down for new items, okay?
Sure thing. So the first thing we're going to do is have an overview of our budget. So I have Mr. Manning here today. He's got a PowerPoint. He's going to kind of go over the process that we've gone through. We're at the very ending stages of the budget process. I think at the end of the month, we'll be getting a final vote from council. So I think we're going to have a chance to go over that with Mr. Manning. We did have an evening meeting last week to kind of go over a lot of the items in the budget. It's definitely been in the news. It's definitely been on our social media, and it's definitely on our website. So Mr. Manning will give you all the details.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Mark Manning. I am with the Department of Finance. I'm going to put this on slideshow. That's what I want. So thank you for allowing me to come today. It's my pleasure to be here today. I will try not to take up very much of your time. I'll give you a very high-level overview of our budget situation right now, and then we'll drill down to maybe some stuff that's more specific to the park system that maybe it might be of more interest to you. And they say that in a PowerPoint like this, that a lot of times you lose the attention span of people in about 8 seconds. So I'm going to give you an 8-second overview, and then I'll spend more time on it. Some things financially are going very well for the city right now, but we have a lot of significant challenges. Fortunately, ARPA funding for the next 3 years is pretty much going to cover any problems we have, so we're in great shape for 3 years. Then we have some significant concerns, so we have 3 years to address as many issues as we can to structure ourselves to be sustainable, so the next 3 years will be pretty good, and then we'll worry about what comes. That's your 8-second version in case you lose focus from here on out. So we'll talk about budget development, like Troy mentioned. I'll give you an overview of the budget in general, and then we'll talk about the budget calendar, which will probably be of some interest for you. I would tell you that all these materials are available online. If you have your phone and want to get the link, now would be the time to do that. That little QR code right there will take you right to them. You can go to our public libraries or a variety of other places, but those documents are available online. So what's our current development environment right now? Our economy locally is doing very, very well. That means our revenues are performing very well. That's a really good thing in my business. But on the downside, we have some significant inflationary factors like everyone else. That's hitting us primarily in the wage area, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Troy's probably mentioned that in the past, some of the challenges that's caused us. It's also causing us problems on the capital improvement project side. We use resident engagement a lot. It's very important to us, and you're going to see some areas where that significantly influenced the recommendations the city manager made. Street pavement markings, for example, trees, for example, are two things that we floated out to our constituents, and they gave us some very strong feedback on, and those are things that we incorporated for a couple examples. ARPA funding, as I mentioned, is really helping us out. We're going to use that primarily on the capital improvement budget. So that's going to help us fill a lot of holes on the capital improvement budget we ordinarily wouldn't have been able to address. And finally, as I noted, we do have some long-term sustainability issues, that is after 2024, that we're really concerned about, but we do have several years to right-size ourselves. Pie charts, I won't spend much time. Takeaway on this one is about a third of our revenues out of the property tax, and about a third or so is out of our share of the county sales tax and out of franchise fees. So that just kind of tells you where we get our revenues. Park department, of course, is funded mostly from the general fund, except for golf. So that's why this slide is relevant to you. Let's look at how we spend our money. Takeaway on this one is about 80% of our general fund is spent on police, fire, public works, and park. That's about 80% of where we spend all of our tax dollars are in those four areas. This shows you how we spend as far as what we call character. Takeaway here is about 3/4 of all our general fund dollars are spent on people. We're a very labor-intensive business. The businesses that we provide services in are very labor-intensive for the most part, and you can see that reflected on this slide right here. And I mentioned inflation previously and how that's impacting our wages. This is why that's a problem, because 75% of our budget is wages, so inflation on 75% of our budget is presenting some challenges to us. We talked about ARPA. Again, I'll give you the big picture here. Here's how we plan to spend our ARPA money, and this is dynamic. The council approved a conceptual plan about a year ago, and we've tweaked it a little bit as we go, but this is generally pretty consistent with what we've talked about over the years. Takeaway there is we want to spend about $33 million of it for capital improvement projects. That's good because those are one-time projects, and we don't build them into the base. It's also good in that it expands the CIP, which gives us more flexibility to fund things like park projects. You can see we're spending $20 million. That $20 million has been in the news a lot. That's our workforce development money. That's our affordable housing money. That's our corner store initiative money. And that's our small business assistance money. And then finally at the bottom, you can see we've got about $14 million allocated to help the general fund out. That's what will keep us stabilized for the next 3 years. When that money goes away in 2024, what do? That's the $64 question. But again, we've got 3 years to right-size ourselves and make sure that we're sustainable past that time period. So I want to flip to the CIP real quick, and then we'll talk about what's in here specific to the park department. Again, on the CIP, one of the big issues is inflation, particularly steel. If your CIP project has steel, that's really bad right now. And that's police substations and some of the bridges. The Hamilton Bridge, for example, is another one that's causing us challenges. So that's a significant challenge in the CIP. We also debt finance a lot of things in the CIP. Interest rates are going up, which I'm sure you're well aware of. That's a challenge for us too. But again, the good news is we have $33 million in ARPA funding that will help us cover some of those issues. So here's what the CIP looks like. It's huge, $2.4 billion with a B dollars. You can see how we finance it. The GO at large slice, that's your property tax slice, that $310 million, that's the part that residents pay with property tax. Very small piece of the entire CIP. A lot of people lose sight of that, but most of the CIP is funded with water and sewer utility, charges and money from the state of Kansas and things like that. Property tax is a very small portion of the CIP. How do we spend our CIP money? Well, if water and sewer utility charges are large revenue, then we spend a lot on water and sewer, and you can see that from this chart. But you can see the park slice there is about $44 million. generally hovers around $45–50 million over the last few CIPs fairly consistently. So it's a relatively small slice, but again, Park is funded entirely from GO, and remember the GO slice was $310 million. So if you're looking for a ratio, really the Park CIP is about, what, a sixth of our GO CIP, if I'm doing the math right. This slide, the only takeaway on this slide, this is a measure of our debt. Debt is not bad. Debt's okay as long as you use it appropriately. It's like any other tool. You want to use it appropriately. Well, we define appropriately as less than that green line there. So the takeaway on this chart is the debt levels in the proposed CIP are acceptable, but if you want to look on the pessimistic side, I would tell you that notice that the debt level is increasing throughout the period. So, but again, it's increasing below our acceptable level. So let's pivot into what's in this budget as far as recommendations go and drill down specifically to the Park Department, which is probably what you care mostly about. Just overall, I mentioned wages. I'm going to talk big picture, but it impacts the Park Department. And Troy could probably spend hours talking to you about this. It's a challenge for us to attract people. It's a challenge for us to retain people. A lot of that's due to inflation in the wage market. So we're trying to develop some strategies to increase entry-level wages. We're trying to develop some other strategies to make our wages more competitive. We'll see how well that works. Another challenge we have is filling vacant positions. Again, I have no doubt Troy has told you all about that, and he's got some of the more egregious problems in the city, particularly in the forestry area. That's a continued challenge. Again, we're looking at some solutions there. One solution may be to shift funding to contractors, at least in the short term. If we can't fill positions with city employees, we may look to trying to supplement city staff with contractors, at least as a short-term solution. So we'll see how those play out. Specifically to Park, and this first one is exactly what I was just talking about that. We got the message, trees are very important. Our urban camping is very important. That was crystal clear in the feedback that we got from resident engagement and from discussions by the city council. We also recognize the challenges that Park has in that, primarily the challenges in filling positions. So the strategy that we will employ is that we will work with Park staff and we will try to shift any wage money that they cannot spend, and we'll try to shift that towards contractors so that we can enhance our tree planting efforts. So we'll do an evaluation of that probably in the next 3 weeks and see where we're at. And again, we'll work with Troy's folks to try to transfer as much funding as possible to contractual tree planting so that we can make sure we achieve our outcomes there in spite of the challenges we're having filling positions. We had some feedback on drinking fountains, and so you'll see some money for hydration stations in the core area primarily. That's not a large dollar amount, but I wanted to point that out to you. We also put some additional money in for trash removal in some of the parks, I think $50,000, and again, just to improve the intervals of trash or rubbish pickup in the parks, which is kind of a challenge. Let's pivot to the CIP. We have money in for the last few phases of Watson. We're in a 10-year master plan, so this will finish that up over the next couple of years. On the beginning side, we've got funding for the first phase of some improvements at LW Clapp in the next couple of years. There's also more money in the out year. I'm just looking in the next couple of years. And then wetlands also, we have some additional money, I think, to finish that project. Those are all in the next 3 years. Some other recommendations in the CIP, we have more money for dog parks. That's another thing that we heard a lot of in engagement. Dog parks are an amenity that people want. So we have money in for country acres specifically, and then we have some additional money in for a couple other potential areas where dog parks or where renovations of areas may be appropriate. We have money for a couple shelters. Most of that's in for the Ailey shelter, but there is money for Kiwanis as well. We've got some funding in the near term, 23, for park security and lighting to address some challenges that we have there. And then we've also got some funding in for Finley Ross park improvements. That's pretty much the extent of my presentation. I'm going to go over the calendar real quick. The city manager actually presented the budget, gave the PowerPoint I'm giving today, except on a much more comprehensive and global basis. You could see that on YouTube, or you could go to our website if you were that interested. It's about a 30-minute presentation, so I gave you a little bit quicker version. But he did that on July 2nd. And then on August 4th, which was a couple days ago, we had our evening meeting, and residents came and provided feedback to us. And again, you could watch that on YouTube if you were so inclined. We will have another budget hearing on August 16th at 9 a.m., our normal time. Again, there's just to be a short staff presentation. That's an opportunity for residents to provide any feedback they choose about any topic regarding the budget. And then finally, the big day is August 23rd. That's the day that the City Council will approve the operating budget and include any changes or recommendations that they wish to make at that time. So anyway, that's my presentation. Hope it wasn't too fast. I want to be respectful of your time because I know you have a lot on the agenda today. So I kind of gave you the high-level version. Happy to answer any questions now or later. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to, Troy can reach out to me if there's any specific questions that you have. But with that, that's in my presentation, Mr. President.
Thank you. Questions for staff? No questions. Okay, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
So you say you move, if you can't fill a position, you move to contractors. Is there a time limit on those contractors, or is there a move back to employees whenever you can do that?
Yeah, good question. We operate on a calendar year, so pragmatically, we'll do it through December 31st, and then we'll reevaluate next year, because everything we do is on a calendar year. So we plan to look at where Troy's at, probably the 1st of September. We'll work with the staff. We'll see how much money we don't think he can spend in personal services, and then we'll try to shove as much of that into contractuals through the end of the year as we can.
Thanks.
So yeah, I wanted to make that a little bit more clear is that, so as we're ramping up, hiring staff, we're not going to be able to hire staff in an instant. So there's salary savings throughout the year, and we've had some salary savings with these vacancies. So instead of putting money right into that line item and say, we're going to buy X amount of trees or we're going to do X amount of planting with additional dollars, it's a little bit smarter to say, you know what, let's fill our positions, and there's some savings that we have that we want to use to augment that task. And so after that, after we get fully staffed and we spend money, then we can be a little bit more strategic in regards to what kind of funding do we really need to address more trees in a more systematic way. So just wanted to clarify that because it sounds a little bit weird. We are putting more money towards trees. We are working on that task. We're doing it a little bit differently. Instead of just saying, hey, we want an extra $500,000, we have savings, and instead of sweeping that savings at the end of the year, we want to use that savings, whether we use it for contracting or actually making contracts to make purchase for the trees, because we know we're going to have some money there because we have not been able to fill all those positions. So, does that sound correct?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make it a little bit easier.
We're all about the outcome. We want the outcome. Ideally, we'd have city staff perform the outcome, but if we can't spend it there, we'll spend it on contractors to achieve the outcome.
And it might be that we actually make a contract for purchasing the trees. So we have that contract in hand already, and we can spend that money next year, but we'll have a contract in hand for all the trees.
Other questions for staff? I just myself wanted to say I definitely appreciate taking action on the feedback. If there's feedback I'm personally hearing from the public and from fellow members of the board, I mean, trees has to be up near the top. Definitely appreciate the question from Tom about the contract question. That was something that was a little unclear to me. So just the fact that it's a stopgap. I had two quick questions. Well, just one more comment. Really do appreciate the dog park. We had talked about the need across the city for more access for dog runs, dog parks, so definitely appreciate action being taken on that. I specifically had a question, though, on the hydration stations. While I'm very thankful that that feedback has been taken, the one other issue that related to water that has come to me more than almost anything else is bathroom access in our park assets. So I'm just curious if there's been any discussion about, while we are improving our access to hydration, we improve bathroom access across our city.
I don't remember a specific discussion this year. We have talked about it in the past. One challenge we have with bathrooms, I'm sure Troy would tell you, is bathrooms require maintenance, and that is always a challenge, and they're also a lot more expensive than hydration stations. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but those are some of the challenges we've run into in the past with restrooms.
Okay.
So a little bit more in that. An example is NASCAR Park. Purposely was not designed with a bathroom in place because of all the maintenance and vandalism. That's one of the biggest issues is our bathrooms get vandalized. And then what happens is we lock them because they're not safe. And then we start using another solution is putting out porta potties. And then we find our porta potties catching on fire or being pushed over. So then the porta potty companies don't want to provide a service anymore because they're losing money. So it's a very systemic issue. There's not a silver bullet, not a silver one answer to say, hey, we need more bathrooms. We need more bathrooms, but we currently have bathrooms that we can't even maintain and operate currently because of the lack of staff, because of the lack of maintenance, because of the vandalism. So there's answers to that. There could be answers, whether we have automatic locks that close at night, staff that actually goes and maintains them a little bit more often. Those are all things that we should explore first to make sure that we can maintain the bathrooms. Again, it's not probably very strategic to say, okay, we want to put $1 million and put in more bathrooms when we can't even take care of what we have. So what we need to do is address those issues first and then add in additional bathrooms once we have the resources and plans to be able to take care of them. Okay?
Definitely appreciate that. Definitely appreciate the limitations. I just wanted to make certain I verbalize that is still something that when I hear from folks, they want an answer on it. So I appreciate the realistic facts of the case, but I just wanted to be heard on that. So let's move along to item B. In that case, thank you very much, Director Manning.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and move on to item B, which is the new baseball field.
Sure. So Mr. Lutz, I think he's going to be doing a presentation. We've been partnering with League 42 for, 10 years now, at least? I'm sorry? 9 years. With that, we made much improvements to McAdams Park, and League 42 has been hugely impactful. And so I think they're looking at doing some expanding, which we've talked about, and we wanted you guys to be aware of this, and hopefully we can get your support. So, Mr. Lutz, it's all yours.
I assume I'm supposed to come up here, right?
Yes. Welcome.
Thanks for having me today. As Troy pointed out, we have had a relationship with the city of Wichita and specifically Parks and Rec since League 42 was founded in 2013. We picked McAdams as our potential home because of its location, because of the clientele we attempt to serve, and because of the history of that park. And we have been beyond happy to be at McAdams Park. We're a low-cost baseball league, but we don't act like one. We had almost 600 kids in our league this year on 43 teams. We only charge $30 to play. That's per child or family of siblings, and we fill up very quickly. And McAdams is a great home for us, as I said. Justin Graham from Schaefer, Johnson, Cox, and Fry is here today, as well as Mitch Pinkham from Multicon. We have worked collectively with them and the city on a project back in 2015, 2016 that resulted in a new small turf field as well as a new restroom and concession facility. Some of that money was also spent to renovate 2 existing bigger fields at McAdams, and the complex has taken a great step forward. We are also building a $2 million facility that we're going to use for after-school educational needs for our kids. That property is just across the street on some land that we've had, now we've been able to purchase. It's not city-owned land, so it's on 17th Street. And we worked very well with the city on the Jackie Robinson Pavilion. I hope many of you have seen the results of that labor. So we have had a great run of it, but from the very beginning, we always felt like a fourth field was necessary for us. Not a fifth field, as long as I'm around, but a fourth field. We have currently 3 fields. We play 5 age groups on 3 fields. So we're constantly moving bases back and forth, pitching rubbers. We have 2 different pitching distances on 2 of our fields. A fourth field would alleviate a lot of our issues. We have been talking to Parks and Rec and Troy and the city for a good number of years about this. We are in the midst of a $6 million fundraising campaign. We have raised $4.4 million of that. Part of that money is going toward the new education center, the Leslie Rudd Learning Center, and we now have the funds in place to build this fourth field. It's at 15th and Wabash on the northeast corner of that intersection. The plan is for it to be a home to our Monarch division, which is 9 and 10-year-old kids. It's an ideal spot, and we're looking forward to having that happen. So that's kind of where we are. I've given you a little material on the proposal. Justin is going to be working on plans for this. We just wanted to come and talk to you all about our vision and what we see happening for League 42. As I said, there is no plan to come to you in 3 years and say we need a 5th field, okay? So I want to dispel any thoughts of that potentially happening. We recognize the space limitations at McAdams. We think that we've contributed to a kind of a rebirth of that park in many ways, and we're proud to be there, as I've said. So I guess I would open it up to questions. I know that I've been told by my buddy Larry and by Troy that trees are a big deal. And yes, we would be removing a few trees for this fourth field. But we have all kinds of spaces at McAdams Park on the baseball fields that currently exist that could use some shade. We love shade. If you're a baseball fan, you love shade more than you like beer. Well, maybe not quite, but shade's pretty valuable. So we are very open and willing and enthusiastic about adding trees in strategic spots at McAdams Park to help our parents find a little more shade. I guess if there are questions, Troy, is that
Questions for
proper
our
thing?
speaker? Okay, well, I wanted to say I think this is a really interesting and impressive view, especially that clearly so much work has gone into this. This is clearly a labor of love. What is tell me if you've had any outreach to the district advisory board. Have you had discussion with your city council member, with Councilmember Johnson?
We have reached out to our advisory board. They're aware of what's going on, and we've talked to them. The next step was to come here and talk to you all and explain what it is we're doing there or what it is we want to do there. We think it will add tremendously to the park. We think with the upcoming renovation of the recreation center, in addition to a fourth field, in addition to the Leslie Rudd Learning Center, which technically is not a part of the park, but it's right there. And then the Jackie Robinson Pavilion and the 17th Street renovation. We think that end of the park, that north end of McAdams, has been transformed, and we think we've had a hand in that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I appreciated you speaking also to the tree issue. I think there's a lot of creative solutions that, at the end of the day, if we've got these policies in place, and that's what I'm so excited about, is that we can have these discussions about maybe we have an asset that's even better because of this kind of work? Could we create spaces that make the park even more livable, even more friendly? So I'm supportive because you've been open to that and are answering for that. So if there are no other questions, oh, Tom, you got a question? Council.
So you're saying you're gonna self-fund all these changes, adding the field, right? You're not asking us to add extra funds to the budget?
We are not asking, at this point, for help from the city. The city was very helpful early on with $1.5 million that was used, as I said, to build a new turf field that's now 6 years old, restroom concession. We feel like our fundraising project has gone extremely well. We have the money to pay for the Learning Center and this field. We're still working on raising money. We want to put turf and new lighting on the two big fields. The lighting on those two fields has been there for decades. And while it's still functional, it's not ideal. And the turf on the two bigger fields, we think, creates a situation where we don't face as many rainouts. We can play more, and just the aesthetics of turf. Even though we have great fields, our dirt fields are fantastic, but eventually that's what the remaining money that we're trying to raise is going to be used for.
Okay. Troy, so he needs our permission to be able to make these changes?
So we'd want to get your recommendation on it.
Yeah.
And was really hoping Alejo would be here because it's in his district, but Alejo is aware of this as well. I'm going to ask a few more questions, so I'm going to kind of lead you down a path so you could provide more information. But I think you answered one of the questions. This would be a turf field?
The new field would be a turf field.
Artificial
Yes.
turf. Yeah. And it would also include lighting as well.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm leading you down this so these people will all know what that is. I know the
Yeah.
answers to these.
Yeah, lighting, we play our games in the evenings, so we're going from the middle of April until early July. And if it rains, we're going on Saturday, and we're playing all the time. So I've said for years that this is almost a necessity for us to be able to function, is to have that fourth field. And we're pleased to have the opportunity to tell you about it.
So a couple more questions as well. So scheduling of the construction and scheduling of the fields, can you share that information as well?
Well, Mitch is here, and Justin is here, and we have talked internally with them and with Larry about hopefully having this field ready for next season, which starts in April. I think that timetable, depending on how much more explanation is desired, I think that timetable, Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, is still doable, correct? So we would love to have the field. As I've said, we have the financing for it, and we'd love to have it ready for next season.
Okay. So do you have any other questions?
Yeah, Bob, good to see you. You mentioned that you had 600 players this year, around 600 players on 43 different teams. Is this new field going to kind of be an overflow for some of those teams, or are you capping it at 600 players, or are we going to have an opportunity to continue to put a bat and a glove in some of these?
The plan is not to expand beyond the number of players we currently have. The plan is to give us a little breathing room.
So alleviate some of the scheduling issues?
Yes.
Okay.
Last year, we had to miss a few games because it rained.
Sure.
The rain kept us from getting all our games in.
Yep.
And we don't like that. Our kids like to play. Our parents like to come and watch them play. So we think this would accomplish that goal.
So we'll be looking for a recommendation from the board. And then our next step, I think we've covered all the other bases. This will go to council, and so this will be an item for council, and they'll always ask, has this gone to park board? What's the park board's recommendation? So.
Okay, so I suppose we'll take discussion back to the board. Is there any thoughts or any discussion, any questions about, if I were to put, because Alejo is not here, if I were to put forward a motion of support, of a statement of support of this plan to be put forward to the city council, do we have any discussion on that? Any questions, any concerns?
And I think anytime you can put, you know, you can give these underserved kids an opportunity to grow and learn, especially with sports. I'm pretty passionate about that. So, you know, if we're not putting up any money right now, but if we can work in good faith, hand in hand with League 42 and the Parks and Rec Department to kind of help with the tree issue a little bit, I don't see any issues. And obviously, I'm pretty passionate about sports and the local youth, so I think this is a great opportunity.
And just before we go any further, could we get a second for the motion?
Oh, I've made a motion. Can I get a second?
And I'll second
Oh,
that.
seconded by
Thank you.
Member Fonestock. All right, then. Let's go ahead and just take a vote. There's a motion that has been seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. So we are drafting a statement of support. Congratulations. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for doing what you do.
So we'll be looking for a date to go to council. I'll be in touch, Bob.
All right. Thank you very much for being here. Really do appreciate your presentation.
We're going to go celebrate now.
That's right. With some of that
If you guys
shade-
can,
shade and beer. And Troy, as a matter of fact, if you hear anything, is that the people want more shade and more beer in their
Yeah.
parks.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
so I don't know if you heard me, Bob, but I'll be getting in touch with you for,
I'm sorry.
I don't think you heard me, but I'll be in touch with you in regards to presentation to council. We'll see if we can get that done.
Thank you all.
Okay?
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on. All right. This is the moment for pickleball. Let's hear it. Thank you very much for being here today.
You are welcome. I'm Becky Middleton. I've been here before, three times maybe. Most of you look familiar. I'm not sure how many were here for which meetings or what you've heard and what you haven't heard. So I'm just going to kind of refresh everybody's memories and the issues at hand. So I brought along some support today. Chris Heck, who's a pickleball pro and also a national champion, just handed you out a map showing the courts that we're talking about. Sitting beside him is Noy Surenthone. He's our new Wichita pickleball director. And that's a big step because we've been trying to get a pickleball director for how many years, Chris? A long time. So we welcome Noy. He is putting all kinds of things together for us, like leagues and programming and children's things and all the stuff that needs to produce a productive and successful program. And sitting behind Noy is Greg Smith. He's the leader of our leadership team, which is a liaison team that has been put together to talk to the city rather than the city talking to 1,000 people. And he does a great job with that, and he also puts on tournaments and has raised funds that we have for this project. Carolyn Arnold sits 2 seats behind Chris, and she is a Marine and an attorney, and she also sits on the leadership team and advises us well. Dave New sits beside her, and he's sort of an unofficial ambassador, and he is a tremendous advocate for pickleball. So all of these people have been instrumental in pickleball for at least, 6-8 years. So if you have any questions that I can't answer, they're here for you. Let's see. Troy, did you give them copies of the matrix? Does everybody
Yes.
have that? Okay, good. You might want to refer to that as we go along here. Having been at this meeting a few times, and I always stay until the end because I want to know what you guys do. And I think we're all here for the same reason, and that is to maintain and improve our Wichita parks. And I've learned a lot about the parks and the facilities and the programs, and I thank each of you for your commitment and your conviction to come down here and do this. Thank you. Last month, toward the end of the meeting, a board member asked this question: what do we want our parks to look like in 100 years? That has really stuck with me. And I've thought about that. I'm 68 years old, so I've already experienced a great deal of our Wichita parks. I'm a resident of Wichita lifelong. Seen a lot of changes, like the closing of the zoo in Riverside Park that served as the city zoo until the opening of the Sedgwick County Zoo, the closing of Riverside Pool I swam in as a child, the closing of other pools. I think I've walked every inch of the public golf courses and grieved when they clamped down, but I understand why these things happen. Financial advantages and the decisions, the hard choices that have to be made. So I played tennis on many of the public courts and watched them deteriorate over the years as well. The point is, in 100 years, if you look forward, the way that our parks are going to look are based on what we do today. And we have to remain dynamic, and we have to make tough decisions that keep our parks relevant and following national trends and enhancing the quality of life in Wichita and making it a more attractive place to work, play, and raise a family. Let's see. Like I said, I'm going to just kind of go over the high points of this matrix that was given to all of you, and it's about converting 2 tennis courts under the lights at Edgemore to 6 pickleball courts. Option 1. 12 pickleball courts at Edgemore, the pros. They are the most dedicated youth courts in one City of Wichita location until pickleball complex is completed in 2023 or 24. It allows for tournaments to be scheduled, which could be a revenue generator if we had 12 courts. It meets demands for more courts. Examples, July 12th evening, pickleball courts full with people waiting, no tennis players, pickleball players using tennis courts as pickleball courts. July 28th evening, pickleball courts full with people waiting, no tennis people. Soccer practice being held on tennis courts. Pop-up party on Memorial Day at Seneca. 6 courts full all day with a waiting line from 8 in the morning till 5 p.m. Wichita tournament held at Riverside, 278 entries. July 4th, we had over 70 people show up for open play from 7 to 11 a.m. People were still there when I left at 12:30 in 100-degree plus heat. When I go to Edgemore on the weekends, there will be at least 30-plus pickleball players with maybe 2 tennis players. This is just a glimpse of the pickleball popularity and the need for additional courts. This will extend playing time during the hottest months for family and people that work in the daytime. And we've raised $27,000, and the Wichita Parks Foundation has expressed willingness to match the donated funds for this particular project. We are not asking for money, but instead gifting the city of 6 more pickleball courts. Following national trends, the Bobby Riggs Tennis Center in San Diego now has 20 pickleball courts and 3 tennis courts. Just saw where Cordillera, a prominent golf club outside Vail, has 5 pickleball courts, and they built 1 tennis court. Are you starting to see a trend here? A ratio of almost 7-to-1 at Bobby Riggs, which was solely tennis, and a 5-to-1 ratio at Cordillera. This is standard everywhere. My closest count for outdoor tennis courts is at least 64. I count 23 outdoor dedicated pickleball courts. There is an overabundance of tennis courts compared to pickleball courts. There are 25 parks around the city to play tennis, and only 4 parks with outdoor pickleball courts. Cons. Decreases the number of tennis courts at Edgemore. We are asking for half of the concrete, which would allow for 12 pickleball courts. Pickleball can accommodate 48 players with 12 courts, or half the concrete. Tennis would be left with half of the concrete, or 4 tennis courts. able to accommodate 16 players. If tennis had 100% of the concrete, the most players it could accommodate would be 32. Not even close to what pickleball can. Classical school, which is one of the obstacles why this was rejected last year, is they could practice and have their tournaments at McAdams rather than Edgemore. They have 6 courts there. It is 6 to 8 minutes drive to Edgemore and 8 minutes to McAdams for them. It's 2 minutes difference, not much of an inconvenience. I drove it 3 times during different times of the day, consistent. Classical school is a private school that has no green space and are using Edgemore as their extended campus for their intramural tennis practice. The tuition at Classical for the upper level grades starts at $8,500 annually. McAdams has 6 tennis courts. Riverside just received $1.5 million to upgrade their facility to 12 tennis courts, making this a tournament site where students can receive scholarship visibility, if there is any. And it is fair for Classical School. Is it fair for Classical School, a private institution, to dictate what the city of Wichita does for the recreation of the entire city? And then the other obstacle that we ran into last year was WSU. They were complaining that the 27 letters you got from the tennis people, WSU complained that they wouldn't have overflow courts for their tournaments. Well, they have taken their tennis courts at WSU and turned them into pickleball courts. So why are they putting the burden on the city of Wichita for their overflow courts when they can't even do it themselves? Let's see. Pickleball it's not a fad. It is here to stay. Nothing lasts forever. Look at tennis. Pickleball is in its infancy and will be around for many years. It is a sport that everyone can play, any age, any skill level. It is inexpensive and easy to learn, but not easy to be good at. And the social and physical benefits of pickleball are endless. We are asking for fairness and equity, and if there is one thing that I could say that would magically convince you of converting these courts, I would say it, because it is true and it is right. It's the right thing to do for the best interests of our community and the quality of our lives in Wichita, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for our speaker?
The tournaments that you have mentioned, is that, would that be like local tournaments, or would that bring outsiders into our city?
We already bring outsiders into our city for tournaments. The ICT tournament does bring a lot of, it's an annual tournament. It's actually twice a year. And people from Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri, all around us come in for that tournament.
So in what way, it's been mentioned on here, a potential bringing in revenue. So is that just from having, outsiders with more tournaments and stuff like that? Is that what you're getting at with the revenue coming in? Or
Entry
is there another-
fees. Entry fees
Okay.
account for a lot of it. I would say mostly entry fees. And also, when the outsiders come, they spend money for hotels and food and lodging and shopping, everything this fine city has to offer.
If I could also add that when they want to make reservations and have those courts exclusively, there's a fee to go with that. And so we do charge a fee for that, and that becomes a revenue for our department.
And you said you've already raised the $27,000 so far?
Yes, we have. We have done a tournament called the Bob Jackson Tournament, which is what our friend Greg Smith over here has done for the last 4 years. Is it 6 years? Wow, already. Anyway, Bob Jackson was one of our original ambassadors in pickleball, and he passed away, so we do a memorial tournament, and we raise money through that for this. We've also had some donations, outside donations, besides the tournament, but mostly tournament fees. Like I said, the WPF will consider strongly matching our funds.
Troy, have we offered the school another park, like McAdams? Have we spoken to them?
We've talked to them in the past, not with a lot of interaction or anything like that, but I do believe they know that we would find options for them. We would not just let them,
Right.
we would find ways to make sure that they're accommodated.
And I'm sure you would. I don't know. We've spoken to them and said, hey, here's what's going on. Of course, this is the second time. We're going to come around to this. Can we reach out to them and say, we want to find a compromise, right? McAdams is available. It has what you need, so that they also have what they need and they have what they need too.
Right. Reggie, I think we reached out, but I'm not sure to what detail. And we could definitely do it again. I think we've done something, but probably not as informative or as formal.
We did have some initial conversations when it was the first time around. We haven't spoken back with them about the options. Since it's been time, that's something we can do.
Can we do that then?
Tom, you have any question?
Have we heard from the tennis people? Are they in favor? Are they object? Is there a comparable association of tennis people that would get into a net war maybe?
So last year, the presentation was provided, and as Becky had mentioned, there was 27 letters and several folks that came to the meeting with the objections that I think is in here. But as I look at the usage of the tennis courts, when pickleball is played morning, noon, and night, these folks really have a very small time frame that they use these tennis courts. So what I'm trying to say is that there's definitely a stronger demand for pickleball than there is for tennis. I've seen that. I know that. And yet there's still ways that we can accommodate tennis, and we still are doing that as well. So the question is how do we want to do that? There's a lot of different ways of doing that, and this is one of those options.
Further questions for our speaker?
Yeah, Becky, good to see you again. I remember this issue came up last year, and there was a reason, if you could remind me why we don't prefer Eastview or maybe Boston. Is it because of the tournament sites? I know you guys kind of play over at Riverside as well. When tournaments come in, it's difficult operationally if you're at two different courts. Am I remembering that correctly? Can you refresh?
When we have a tournament, we would like to have more courts, because if you just have 6 courts and you have 100 people playing in a tournament or more, and you have other tennis courts, you have to tape those off. You have to use temporary nets. It's an expense. It's a lot of work. It's ideal to have 12 pickleball courts together rather than have 6 pickleball courts at Edgemore and 6 pickleball courts like maybe at Eastview. And I did meet with the tennis people. I met with Julie Keiss, who is a past board member for the Mo Conley, and I met with her to discuss how we can resolve the issue at Edgemore. And she said, one of the things she said was to me after I said, Julie, we don't want to move, maybe we could do Eastview. And she said, oh, you'll have more problem getting Eastview than you do Edgemore. So apparently that's a coveted place by the tennis players to play tennis, and that they would object to pickleball being at Eastview more so than at Edgemore. It's nice to have 6 pickleball courts and 6 lighted pickleball courts and 3 indoor pickleball courts when you're having a tournament, so that everybody's together, and it's just the function of it is so much easier. Did everybody receive the 90 plus letters that were written by the pickleball group? Were you able to read them?
I read through them, yeah.
Did you? Mm-hmm. Any impressions you want to share?
Y'all are motivated and organized, and it's impressive. I guess the question I would have, I don't know what my fellow board members are thinking, and I just would like to leave it up to them first. But I would say the only question I would have of you is beyond this vote, is there something that we could be doing to help? You know, I just really like to hear that you guys are so organized. I mean, it reminds me of the thoughts and discussions we had around the ice center, generating revenue for the city. Are there any roadblocks we can try to get out of the way otherwise in relation to this would be my only other question.
No, at this point, I think it's a nationwide problem. The tennis community is completely against pickleball, and they feel like they own 100% of the concrete that's painted with their tennis lines. And they don't. Those courts are owned by the city of Wichita and by all the people who paid the taxes to have those courts laid, painted, and played on. I used to be a tennis player. It's what got me to pickleball. So I wear a lot of hats, and I don't want to destroy tennis by any means. So, you know, other than just kind of smoothing out the path with the tennis people is really the main objective here, I think. And it will take you into the future because there's going to be more decisions that need to be made with the other courts in this town. And if you can solve this, you're going to solve a lot of problems.
Further questions for our speaker?
I have another question, sorry. So pickleball, there's potential to bring in revenue. Does anybody know what does tennis tournaments or anything like that? I mean, is that what's comparable to revenue? He's got his hand right there.
Okay, so the last time I played in the US Open, which was just before COVID, we had to sign up, and there's 50 courts in Vegas. Since then, even through COVID, there are over 80 courts in that area now because they saw the need their city did. We had 918 entries were allowed into the US Open. That was filled in 6 minutes online. They told you midnight, January 1st, you were allowed to sign up. Over 900 entries in 6 minutes. These tournaments are blowing up. There's 2 different leagues. There's the PPA and the APP. They will not come to this city until we get around 30 courts in an area. When we start getting bigger facilities, they'll come here. They should come here. We have 4 of the top 15 players in the world. I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them. These tournaments are here, though. We have the players here. We should be having the major tournaments here. When we do that, we're going to have 1,000 people coming into the city to play pickleball.
So if I can piggyback off of that a little bit, I mean, aren't we planning a pickleplex down the road?
Yes.
Can you update us on
Yeah, in
where
fact,
we are in the process of that?
We're actually looking at some conceptuals today, and once we get a little bit further down the line, we'll bring that, and that's really focusing on 20 courts, 1 championship court and 1 junior championship court, 18 additional courts, half of them lit, but it depends on how far we can stretch the budget. If we get a great construction company that will give us a great discount, we can go really, really far. But we'll see how that goes. However, there's room for expansion. We're doing it down at South Lakes, so if it goes well, we can actually add some indoor courts or actually expand the outdoor courts as well. And the whole idea behind this is to bring tournaments from all our neighboring states. The same thing that we've been doing over at Stryker Soccer Complex is bringing folks from other states and other parts of the state to come play. And that's the same thing we want to do over at the Pickleplex.
So we're looking at conceptuals that don't even meet the needs of national tournaments. They won't even look at us unless we have 30 congruent courts. Is that correct? Is that what I heard? So can you explain that to me? Why are we not looking at?
Because the budget. If I had $5 million, we would be able to do that. I have $3 million.
Is there there's got to be a way. I mean, if we're bringing in people from all over the nation to help offset some of those costs, there's got to be hotel beds, restaurant opportunities that, I mean, there's opportunity there.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
When I'm given a certain amount of money, that's what I have to work with. So the idea behind this is, okay, well, we spend $3 million, and of that, there's other fees, there's design fees, and so that construction dollars start to shrink
Yeah, I'm
and more
aware.
and more and more.
So who's
so-
the decision maker? How can we,
Council?
council?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yep.
certainly we can get creative with that number.
And I think what they would want to see is, and like I mentioned, there's room for expansion. So if it's going well, if there's demand there, and these courts aren't necessarily just for tournaments, but it's also for the locals as well, because you have to use it during the non-peak times.
Yeah.
So there has to be that flexibility to go in there. So the idea is we build it, we have success, we build on that success, there's room for expansion, and we add those additional courts. I mean, we're making a commitment. I mean, we brought in Noy, who's our director of pickleball. We're making a commitment to have more classes, have more tournaments. We're doing more and more than ever before. Larry was just telling me a story about somebody coming in from out of town to visit, and the first thing they wanted to do was go to Seneca to play pickleball. I was just reading an article in Athletic Business about just the demand is not keeping up with the supply of pickleball courts. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, and instead of making a few courts around 5 or 10 different parks, that just adds more maintenance, that's more capital improvements, making large collective areas where everybody can play. And that includes tennis, that includes baseball, as we had just talked about over at League 42. So if you have all these places, all these courts in one place, then it makes it a whole lot easier to manage, to operate, to maintain for a longer period of time.
Just out of respect for Ms. Middleton, do we have any other questions for our speaker specifically, not our staff?
Sorry to keep you up there, Becky.
No, that's okay. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we know where to find you if we have any more, but thank
Yes,
you
you
so
do.
much. If we have any other questions directly
I
for
just
you,
have a little closing statement, and that is pickleball is coming. I've been saying for 8 years, get ready. There's no stopping it.
All right. Well, hey, I definitely appreciate that. And so let's bring questions just for staff. I mean, I wanted to concur with Commissioner Fonnestock's observation that if we are in the process right now of planning a major capital improvement that does not meet the needs of the city at this time and of our community, I would like to know if we can explore some options to help. Because, I mean, that's just a giant revenue opportunity that we'd be passing up. And I don't know how else we can emphasize, I mean, if there's a motion that's needed to emphasize support for seeking a plan. I mean, if you're talking about, we've got dollars that we could be chasing here by the incremental, long-term investment. I mean, we're talking about that interest rates are going to continue going up, costs are going to go up. Either we make this decision now, or wish we had, because it's ultimately going to be more expensive down the road to expand versus planning that. That's at least my thought. Go ahead, please.
My thought on kind of what I'm hearing is, it sounds like what Troy is saying is we need to show that, like, our courts that are being used and fully, utilized, and if we have courts that have lines constantly for them, converting these and seeing how often are they used. Like, is it used enough that when they do the pickleball plex or whatever, then that's gonna also stay busy. If converting and having this 12 pickleball courts and it's continuously has people playing in tournaments going and stuff like that, then that just goes to show that much more to the point that, yes, this complex with 30 courts is the direction we need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Here's our, proof in the pudding, and then it would be probably a little easier to get funding because this is already showing results, positive results.
So a couple things to share. This over at Edgemoor is only a small slice of the pie. Doesn't cost us anything because I would believe that the funding that they've created, as well as the grant that we would get from the Park Foundation, would cover, I would think, most of the costs. But it would make a huge impact in regards to expanding pickleball. Add 6 more courts. But more so, the lighting is so critical because they play until 10 o'clock at night. And they could get there early in the morning. It just, as I see Seneca is used quite a bit except for the hottest time of the day. But people will go there and I've seen people shine their car headlights into the courts to continue to play. So that's just one small part of it. The Pickleplex, when we first were working on this was before COVID and before inflation hit. So at that point in time, $3 million would have got us a lot further. And when we did do this, we also consulted with USA Pickleball. And I very much trust your opinion, but from USA Pickleball, they said the minimum was 20. So obviously 30 will get us further, but 20 will still get us a lot of the tournaments that we need or are looking for. So I respect you very much, but I'm going to go with USA Pickleball to start off with. But yeah,
We'll take 30.
But as we were looking at researching a lot of other places, I've seen, Noy, you sent me some examples. I've seen some other examples of 40, 50 pickleball courts in one location. And it's just like a row and row and row of pickleball courts. I don't think that would be sustainable to what we're trying to do here in Wichita, but it's out there. And I think with 20 courts, we will get a lot of the tournaments that we need and want. So that just popped in my head. I just remembered that, so I just wanted to add that as well.
So to me, there's two different discussions going on here. One in the short term, which is what we're looking at today. I want to be as equitable as possible. It doesn't sound like we've formally reached out to the tennis community as we should. I would like to hear from them and why they prefer Edgemore over McAdams, both from the classical school and WSU's perspective. So I'm not comfortable quite yet. I certainly appreciate you guys coming here today. If no one shows up, if no one protests or anything like that, then great, let's move forward with it. The long-term deal, I don't know whether it's 20 or 30 courts or whatever it may be, but I think we need to be working in conjunction with each other, with Parks and Rec Association, the City of Wichita, the pickleball community, and Visit Wichita for that matter, to find out what meets the needs of Wichita and how we can bring the maximum amount of tournaments here and players here. We've got 4 of the top 15 players worldwide or nationally. I think that's a tremendous resource that we can rely on to move forward with it. But
so to get to this point, the long term, we worked with Visit Wichita. They brought in a consultant group, and they provide us a very detailed report on what and how to do that. We're going to work with USA Pickleball. We have some schematics now that are very basic, but as I had promised our friends over here in the pickleball community, they're going to get the chance to see it. They'll probably see it before you guys do. And we're also going to, like I mentioned, work with USA Pickleball. I think we're going to be making a phone call to them because we had to start somewhere. And so we're going to share our conceptuals with them and go from there. So we have been doing all that.
okay.
And we will continue to do that as well. It's been a very open conversation with the pickleball community. I think I've been very transparent with the pickleball company about the Pickleplex.
Yes.
So,
Troy, you've been a tremendous advocate for pickleball, and we appreciate you.
so in regards to the short-term use of tennis over at Edgemore, we can reach out to those tennis folks and get some feedback and bring that back, or they could bring it back themselves.
I thought we did that when they wrote 27 letters to you. And then
Last year,
our chance was to respond, and we did with over 90 letters. I feel like we've already done that.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys have been having conversations between yourselves. I just haven't been a part of those. So I would like to hear if anything's changed over the past year on their end.
On their end? Okay.
I mean, on everybody's end, they could have changed their minds for all I know. I
think most of
find
us
it
are-
hard to believe that they don't want to go to McAdams because it's a 2-minute longer drive. So I want to be equitable here, and give them a chance.
Okay, it's a great option for them to go to McAdams.
I definitely concur. I mean, like, listen, it's been a long process. You guys have been incredibly patient, but I mean, this is as passionate as you guys are about this. There are gonna be folks on the other side who we're gonna hear about it. So I'm just saying, before we run down, like I'm saying, we're very close, I feel, to making a decision here. I don't know if there's any, my only other thought to the board was maybe we discuss these options, but again, until we know, like, this is the path we want to take, and we are set to go, then we talk about, like, this is our recommendation to the council, that in the short term, and I know that's not the answer you wanted to hear today.
That's okay.
But the answer, like, but what you also have is you got, like, we all want to see you guys, like, let's make it a headquarters, the regional place you go for pickleball. Let's do it. But in the meantime, let's make certain we're being equitable about our assets, I think would be the message from the board here. So really do appreciate your presentation today.
Thank you. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be back.
All right.
Thank you.
That's why I suggested that we have a special meeting just to bring in the tennis community, bring the pickleball community together, and what can we do as one together, right? And reach a compromise together. That's why I said, because this meeting, we have lots to discuss, and I think we owe to both of them to have a meeting just for them.
Would you suggest before the interval should be before the next park board, just to get it done? What's your thought?
Yeah, we should have a special meeting because we owe both of them that. And so I think we give them more time that way. In this meeting, we have so many other items to discuss that we need to reach out to them and say, hey, we're going to all come together and reach a compromise. And here's McAdams for you to use. And so you meet your needs and we can convert these other courts to pickleball. And what's your objections to it, right? I think we owe that to both communities.
Go ahead.
My thought on it is, I think my first or second meeting, she spoke about this topic, and it was just her, and she gave a lot of information. She was here for a little bit, and then I wasn't here last week, so I don't know if she spoke or not. But to me, it was kind of already presented. So I mean, I feel like at what point is it okay? This is, like you're saying, this is the meeting, and this is when we make a decision, instead of have her come. She spoke. Okay, we need to get some more information, and now are we getting more information? So like, I feel like it's just kind of open-ended, so that way having that meeting, like you said, having a date, we make
So your suggestion, you're speaking, concurring that it would be a good idea to have a separate meeting specifically on this?
I feel like, and also a little bit like, I feel like the tennis community, obviously, they're making waves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're not just sitting over there. So I feel like the tennis community probably knows what's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm a little bit surprised that, and maybe I just haven't heard anything, but, so I think maybe, pulling them in.
Right.
Okay, if this is something you're really that adamant about and why you won't go to a different court, then let's sit down and hear it, and then, not to sound rude, but then be done with it, so it can either be decided one way or the other, instead of having to keep collecting information.
Troy, what's the soonest that a special meeting could be called, according to our rules?
I think we need 3 or 5 days notice, if I do believe that's right. Our bylaws will tell us.
I mean, like, just enough, I mean, frankly, if it's 3 to 5 days, I would like to give enough time, no matter what, that everybody knows this is happening. Don't want to create extra work, don't want to create a meeting that could have been an email. I don't think this is a meeting that can be an email. So I think listen, folks, I mean, I know this is time out of your day. What time do you typically do a special meeting around? Is this an evening thing? Is this a daytime thing typically? Or is it up to the board?
It's up to the board.
Do we have any thoughts on when we would like to have this done? Because I imagine this might be a long meeting. It might not.
It'll be long.
Okay, it'll be a long meeting. Okay.
All
Strap it.
90 pickleball people will show up, all 200 tennis, they'll all show up.
Yeah.
So it needs to be over in the chambers.
Yeah.
Be in front of them.
I mean, go ahead. Oh, yes, Ms. Middleton.
One more thing. We have a group called Wichita Pickleball, and we've been very transparent about being here and explaining our process the whole entire way. And there are tennis people that monitor, or they play pickleball too. The tennis community knows what's going on.
Sure.
So I don't know why they're not here today.
I think the diligence that would be done is we'll give them one shot, like, let's say 2 weeks. Is that a good time to say you've got 2 weeks to show up to an evening meeting? Commissioner Ewart?
I'm a little bit concerned. It seems like the opposite decision was made last year. And so the park board is going, either changing our mind or we are, reversing what we did, what was done before I was on board.
Correct.
So that's an important thing.
Well, I think we discussed last year, as McAdams as being an option. I don't, forgive me if I don't remember. Did we even discuss Adam McAdams being an option?
We were talking about McAdams, the option for was that classical school. They were the biggest.
Right. I mean, the university being, that's their own thing, but I mean, as far as a school, there's still a school in our community, so.
All right, so again, I would pose the question to the board, do we think 2 weeks from now would be an appropriate time? Same time, evening, would that be a preferable? I imagine evening would probably draw a bigger crowd, but then again, and then the council chambers would be, because we'll open it up and say, this is a special meeting, I don't know, Racket Fest. It's the Battle of the Rackets. Yeah.
I use paddles.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Oh, paddles versus rackets. Excuse me. Sorry. Oh man, I'm exposing myself as.
And do you want a big bunch of people down there, or do you just want some key people?
I think engagement is good. As much as I don't want to bring people out of their other work and life, I think that I'd be happy to hear from whomever would speak. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Of course.
Would information to you all be helpful if we talked about what has taken place in the city of Wichita with our school district, our schools, our PE teachers, the generational playing of 6-year-olds and 16-year-old teenage brother and sister, and mom and dad and grandma and grandpa, that brings families to the parks and rec. If there's any information that would be helpful to you all about the differences and why this is exploding, I'd be happy to address with several different hats on, about community and economic development, some other areas, and it's just, I just want to be helpful to you all, so you have enough information that you could talk accordingly.
I think we have enough information. I think we just don't want to pull the rug out on the tennis folks. If we do this today, then they will be very upset with us, and we will more than hear about it, and so will the council members. So I think that this is what the compromise is that we all come together in a room to discuss it, right? And say, okay, here's all the options. We're gonna, and everybody gets the ability to. We'll leave the room in a hopefully in a good place where everybody has what they need.
So a very focused conversation about a very specific obstacle.
I think it would be, I would task staff to say, build the agenda on this, and let's try to make this a guided, moderated conversation where at the end of it, we will discuss the options in front of us and try to come to consensus, if not compromise. That's basically what my instinct would be. I don't know if we need a motion for this. My thought would be is 2 weeks from today, 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. ideally in that block that we will say.
You'll need a motion for the special meeting.
Okay, well, I would like to, then in that case, unless we have any questions, I will make a motion to call for a special meeting 2 weeks from today in the council chambers from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. to discuss the matter before us, pickleball and tennis, the future of Wichita. Do I have a second?
And so on this agenda, would you like participating numbers? Would you like rental revenues? Would you like just the engagement that I get on a regular basis from pickleball and from tennis?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, everything.
Yes.
As much metrics as we can have, where you can say, moving forward, the best outcome for everybody is everybody has their space, and not only that, we've got money coming in the door. Yes.
Yep. Okay. So I think we've done a lot of that already. We shared that there's a huge interest and huge impact for pickleball. I think we've shared that these tennis courts aren't being used on a regular basis. I'll be happy to
understand that.
I'll be happy to put that in a presentation of some sorts. So.
Don't want to create busy work. I'm just saying, when we have all the people there, we're going to be creating a very clear case, and some people for the first time are going to be tuning in for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, and he mentioned about the school, which I agree. So when it comes to like the school schedule, when is tennis season and when are tournaments and things like that. Also having that kind of information. And I feel like, I know we'd mentioned something about pulling people away from, work and things like that. If this is something that people are going to be passionate about, whether they're tennis side or pickleball side, then their stance will be known. They'll make themselves present, and any information that you feel like may be helpful, bring it, whether we are able to review it necessarily that time or not. Like just having the information available. And whomever made this little thing is phenomenal. Like that was very helpful for me, like to see the pros and cons. And
No, it wasn't me.
well, it was helpful. So, having that actual information, because you guys say a lot. That's a lot of information to take in and actually see it.
Katie in the back of the room put it together, by the way.
Well, I loved it. It was
Yes.
great. Very helpful.
Yeah. So one more little twist on this, which really doesn't matter, but I will be on vacation. I will be in Cozumel on the beach, but I'll have somebody in my stead. So.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that, but I'd love to have Troy be present, but.
Okay, so, is that will you be back, just to make certain that we're,
Can we do 3 weeks?
will you be back in 3 weeks?
Actually, no. No. But, to a certain extent, and so as staff, when it comes to a decision that you guys are going to be making, we provide a recommendation and we provide information for that. But past that, we try to stay out of it. And I think what you're seeing is you're hearing a different perspective from last year. Last year, you had the tennis perspective, and it was very emotional and very compelling. And there's some good reasons why they want to stay there. If you're talking from staff perspective, the impact of what they use those tennis courts for over at Edgemore is not even a tenth of what the impact is for pickleball. But that's just what we're going to be providing, that information. We're going to be providing those facts and information for you guys to be well informed. So from my perspective, I don't think last year there was both sides of the picture were provided last year. And now you're hearing one side that's providing a lot of information. So at your meeting, we will have a lot of the information, whether it's in a format like this or some other format, that will have a lot of that information.
I feel like we're going to take that information into account whether you're here or not.
Exactly, that's my point. I don't have to be here is my point on all this. You have somebody else, it's going to be Reggie, by the way. And
The award-winning Reggie,
yeah.
by the way. Yes, that's right. He won
But
a
in
major
regards
award.
to our perception on how it impacts the growth and programming and our operations, I think I've shared some of that already, and we'll be willing to provide our opinion on that from our perspective. And so I don't think we'd be here if we didn't think that for the greater good, for the greater impact, providing pickleball, those lighted courts, I think, is the strongest community impact. Can we find opportunities for that school to play elsewhere? Yes, and we've done that, and we will continue to do that, and we'll talk to them about it. So, but we'll provide that information.
And we'll take that into account. And from our perspective, the commissioner's perspective, it's our job to hear from the entire community. So I think that's important here in the next 2 weeks or 2 weeks from today, to hear the other side, and then we will take everything into account and make the best decision for Wichita moving forward. I think we all see that pickleball is steamrolling right now. So.
And as staff, we totally agree, and I think that's why the pickleball folks are very interested in attending meetings and sharing information with you all. So.
All right, we still have an open motion on the floor to call a special meeting with regard to the issue of pickleball and tennis as it relates to the park assets in the city of Wichita on Monday, August 22nd, 2022, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Do I have a second?
I second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Sherman. All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. We will have a special meeting where we will settle the question for now of August 22nd from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. If you're watching along at home, please come to City Hall, to the council chambers on 5:30 p.m. That's in the evening, so if you have to work, come after work, down to City Hall. We will see you in 2 weeks.
What floor is that?
That's right over there, first floor. But yes, thank you very much. Okay, how's everybody doing? Just a quick, do we need to take a quick break? Are we okay for now? Do you want to move forward? Okay. By silence, I will assume we're just going to go ahead and move forward. Let's go ahead and move on to item D. That's the Garvey Park Cyclocross, brought to us by David McGuire and Kevin Williams.
So Mr. McGuire's on vacation this week. So Kevin is going to give an overview of some of our discussions and what we found on this property, which was, are you going to share what we found on the property?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Good.
I had a like a story map link to pull up. Do you know if I can pull that up on here? Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for letting me speak about the hopeful Garvey Park cyclocross park here. So this is basically just kind of an idea of where it is. It's basically if you go from downtown Wichita down Washington south, you run right into it. It's right off of the bike path here. It's right near the drive-in as well, and then there's like Emery Park, BMX Park, not too far from there too. So yeah, my name's Kevin Williams. I am the bike shop manager at Bike Walk Wichita, and so I'll start with kind of what we do. Bike Walk Wichita is working to transform Wichita into a more livable, accessible, connected city by making bikes and walking safe, equitable, and appealing. And we're hoping to turn this park into a cyclocross park, and I'm sure you're all like, what is cyclocross? So here is just a quick overview of kind of what it is, because it's pretty hard to explain. It's better with a video. Hopefully there's some sound.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Powers for BTV TV, and as a pro cyclocross rider, I get asked a lot, what the heck is cyclocross? First thing you need to know about cyclocross is that it's a lot of fun. It takes place in the fall and winter months. The races are less than 60 minutes, and they're usually held on a 2 to 3 kilometer track, which is great because your family, friends, and eventually your fans can see a lot of racing from one vantage point out on the course. You'll be on your bike, you'll be off your bike, you'll be riding through sand pits. If the weather's right, you'll be racing in the mud. So you probably want to know, what kind of bike do I ride? Do I ride a road bike? Do I ride a mountain bike? No, you ride a cyclocross bike. Let's take a look at what makes a cyclocross bike unique. The first thing you're going to notice about a cross bike is that it looks a lot like a road bike smashed into a mountain bike. Cyclocross bikes are different though. Starting out with the frame set, the geometry of a cyclocross bike tends to have a higher bottom bracket for clearance in off-camber sections, deep mud, sand, and other obstacles that you commonly see in cross racing. The higher bottom bracket will also change the handling of the bike to be more effective for cyclocross. The frame set also has an increased clearance for mud, and generally they have a taller head tube for back support and comfort in off-road riding, which allows the rider to be more upright. You'll see pretty aggressive tire treads for cyclocross as well. Cross bikes tend to have knobby tires that are usually around 32 millimeters. The tires will vary in size and in tread pattern for the different conditions you face. Now the brakes on a cyclocross bike have more powerful braking systems than a traditional road bike. In this case, I'm using SRAM hydraulic disc brakes. Disc brakes make...
Okay, so not to keep everyone, that's that's basically an overview of kind of what cyclocross is. And a lot of you probably haven't heard of it because it's pretty popular in Europe. But as you can see from this map here, it's actually pretty worldwide. This is basically like the pro circuit and where they have these pro races all around the world. So you can see here in Europe, there's a whole bunch. US, there's some. And, you got a few spread out there. So as you can see, like this is Belgium and Netherlands, and they've got them kind of all over the place. In the US, it's a pretty big thing on the East Coast. Midwest has some as well, and Pacific Northwest is pretty popular too. Generally, there's tons throughout the US, but not necessarily in a pro circuit. So like Salt Lake's got a big series, Kansas City has a big series, and actually this past January, I think it was January, they had the World Championships in Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is not too far from here at all, which is pretty cool. The only other time it's been in the US was in Louisville, Kentucky, and I believe it was 2013. Generally they have them in Europe somewhere. So that's kind of just an overview of what cyclocross is. So we hope to transform Garvey Park into a cyclocross park where people can practice their off-road cycling skills. The park will be great for beginner riders since the park will consist of wide, unintimidating areas, but it also consists of sections that are very difficult and challenging for even very advanced riders. Generally speaking, like a cyclocross course, you want to have about an 8-foot width throughout. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with like single track parks that you see like in Colorado and kind of like air cap and stuff like that. These are more wide open, and so I guess if you want to think about it in like car terms, it's more like rally racing as opposed to, say, I don't know, like motocross or something where you've got some, wide turns. They do it on a more of like you do laps on the course. So the course lengths are usually about a mile and a half, and you'll do 8 or 9 laps in a race, depending on how fast you are and the conditions and that kind of thing. So that being said, the parks generally don't have any pavement involved, and usually there's not a whole lot of infrastructure. Of course, if you're doing like a world championship course, they'll do a lot more work to it. But the idea is to kind of use what you have and put together a challenging and fun course that way. So yeah, not a whole lot of work would really be needed to the park to accomplish that. Bike Walk Wichita does work with the Parks Department pretty often on things like open streets and those type of things. And we also have a pretty big passionate group of volunteers to pull from when it does come time to putting some labor in that kind of thing, and upkeep and all that. We've also discussed the idea with some local businesses. One of them is REI, and they have, I believe, some grant money and some interest in providing labor and that kind of thing for the project. So we definitely have some opportunities for financial help and labor to help upkeep it. So this is a map I put together of Garvey Park. You can kind of see, basically it's about a 30-acre area of land here, and for the most part, really isn't used at all. You can see the pathway coming down here. So I'm sure if you've ever been out on the paths, you might have even passed it and not even known it was there. So it'd be a pretty cool way to use this whole space. And you can see from like the topo lines here that there is some kind of interesting ups and downs, and it provides a bit more kind of elevation to use creatively and to make a fun course. And this is just kind of a bit more about where it's located here. let's see, do I have to talk about any of this? Yeah, so basically, this is kind of the whole park here, looking towards the west. And essentially, this whole piece of land really isn't utilized at all right now. And in general, from my research, most pretty big courses have been built on around 30 acres of land, a little more, a little less. So it's actually like a really good size for something like that. And then this is kind of an idea of like what like a route map might look like throughout the park. And these are always changing. Like if you don't have like a race or a tournament or a course set up, it's basically just like any other trail system where you can kind of pick and choose where you go. But that's what, you know, a race could look like if we got to that point. So the basic requirements that would need to be done to make, to basically create the course would be just clearing some brush, roughly 8 foot wide, throughout some of these kind of treed areas here. Mild shaping of some areas, just to make it kind of a bit more flat and open. And that would mostly be handwork. The area is pretty sandy, so some compaction of areas that maybe you want to keep rideable would be helpful. But for the most part, the big wide open areas are pretty well rideable. So that's not too big of a deal there. And then, of course, just some simple signage. And goat heads are a pretty big deal there, which are, I don't know, I think the other word for it's like spiny grass or something. I can't remember the other one. But there's a whole bunch of that out there, which can lead to punctures. I've been out riding around, and I have seal on my tires, and that seemed to basically mitigate that, surprisingly. So there might be some of that. I think the soft, sandy soil does help with that because it kind of gives those puncture vines somewhere to go. Some future goals could be addition of like a stair set, which are common in cyclocross races. Addition of topsoil if there's some areas that we kind of just want to keep around more, or some type of stabilization. I'm not sure if that would be topsoil or not, but and like a dedicated start area. For the most part, you can just use any open area to start, but it's always nice to have an area to start if races were to become common there. So this is an example of Centennial Park, which is Fayetteville, Arkansas's course. Just to kind of give you an idea of what theirs looks like. So you can see it's hard to tell here, but it's pretty varied terrain and quite a bit of elevation gain and loss. But they put like years and years into setting this course up, so ours wouldn't need to be anything close to that. But down the road, if it turned into be something very popular, then you know, maybe that'll happen. We'll see. So the idea for actually getting the park going would basically just to kind of come up with a proof of concept, and that would be trimming trees through a small area on the north side of Garvey Park to kind of just come up with an area that we can show like this. It is possible to do this, and basically just determine the best way to work with the soil in a way that works with cyclocross. After that would be essentially designing like a full course using as much land as we could, and being able to utilize the natural landscape in a fun and fun and exciting way. And then the last step would basically be course improvements, stuff that's not necessarily needed for this, but would kind of increase the appeal of it. That could be like adding stair sets, adding different types of, I don't know, even dirt work at that point. And also creating multiple route options that could kind of be set up differently depending on how you wanted the race to go. So that's essentially the idea for the park. When it's not being used for races, it's a great place for people to kind of get out and experience what off-road riding is. And what's nice about it is really the closest place you can go is probably like Air Capital, and it's pretty hard to get there unless you drive there too. This is right off of the bike path, and it's very accessible from downtown, pretty much from anywhere. And it's just a place that isn't really utilized for anything currently. So I think it'd be a great way to utilize that space and get that side of town, just give them the ability to get out on their bikes and work on their skills and get more people involved in cycling in general. So, and that's about it. The rest is just different videos and stuff. So if you ever want to pull up that link and look at some stuff, there's just some kind of flyovers and more stuff on cyclocross specific things. So thank you.
Do we have any questions for our speaker? Any question for our speaker?
I guess, what does the maintenance look like, and who would be taking care of that?
Yeah, so the maintenance would be pretty minimal, and it'd be mostly volunteers that we would be able to work with. Right now, it seems like the park gets mowed, and it's really all it needs, and even at that, there's not a whole lot of grass that really grows. So I think what Parks is doing right now to maintain it is probably more than adequate. And everything else would really be just kind of upkeep section by section once in a while. What's nice about cyclocross course is it seems like it's a bit easier to upkeep than like a single track course, because it is a lot more wide open. People aren't just riding on one spot, and the fact that it's very sandy aids with drainage, and so you don't have big ruts and people destroying trails from walking on it after like a big rain or something like that. So having a park that's not pristine isn't actually an issue with cyclocross, really. So upkeep in general would be minimal, but we'd have the volunteer base to actually do that too. So.
Okay.
Would you like to hear from staff?
Yeah.
Okay, so very minimal maintenance is being done in this park right now, and it's done by a contractor, so we rarely get a chance to actually go out there and set eyes on it. We've had a lot of dumping going on here, and there's also some skateboarders that have been very, very industrious. They actually, somebody came in and poured concrete. I couldn't
What?
believe it. Yeah, they came in and poured concrete and created a little skateboard spot.
I think you can actually see it.
Yeah, which is really great.
Yeah,
So,
like this little spot here.
yeah. So from staff perspective, this would give us an opportunity to have somebody have some extra eyes and actually use the property. Right now, there's no plans for any kind of park development here or anything to really do anything that's really gonna, we're not putting a new rec center here, we're not putting new pools here or anything like that. So having some open space is always great. We really like that buffer, and we like an opportunity, someplace I'll continue to have trees, and we can work with them on that. We don't want them to impact our trees when they're making the track, and so we'll definitely be working with them on that. It would create some type of MOU where we would ask them to do a certain amount of maintenance and what the expectations of what the track would be like, and then there would be some expectations of staff. So for us, we've done this in different situations where we've had a volunteer group that we've done an MOU with, whether it's been one of our skateboarding groups, whether it's been an archery group. They're using some of our facilities, and then they'll help us with some eyes and ears on the location. But they'll also help keep the place clean. There's some expectations about how they would use it, and if they do major events, they still have to do a special event permit and let us know. But in general, we would be very supportive of their activities there, and putting something like this into that park would be great.
Well, it's certainly very innovative. Kevin, can you talk to me a little bit about what the community is like of cyclocrossers, or what do you call each other, cyclones?
Yeah, cyclones. Sure, yeah, cyclones. So usually, like, I don't know, cyclocross groups aren't huge, but they're definitely pretty passionate about cyclocross. And as gravel riding has grown, if you've been involved with that at all, you kind of see how huge it's getting. Like one of the biggest gravel races starts in Emporia. They have a route that actually goes through like Augusta. It's like a 350-mile route, and it brings in thousands and thousands of people from all over the world. So, and then, yeah, it's like having the cyclocross world championships in as close as Fayetteville to us, I think is kind of a testament to the popularity of cyclocross. So I think without having like a solid area to practice cyclocross or a consistent like series every year, it's hard to get people to race it because there's just nothing to race. So I think if that were something that were here and people could use it and eventually we could start a series like that, I think you'd see a lot more people coming out and do it. That's the case in Kansas City. I think they usually have about a 17 or 18 race series in the fall, and these are usually in the fall. So the series will start around September, and they'll usually end somewhere around December. And you kind of see those growing every year. And people do actually travel to go to them. Like, it's not uncommon for people from Wichita to go to Kansas City or even Oklahoma City to race in these series every weekend. So it is something that I think with a nice cyclocross park, I think you would see people actually coming to travel to Wichita to actually race those. And that's pretty common really all over the U.S. Like I lived in Salt Lake City, and they had like a 13 or 14 race series, and they would so generally they'll have them kind of all around the city at different parks and kind of varying terrain, so each week's a little bit different. But yeah, so I think to answer your question, I don't know if there's a huge cyclocross park or cyclocross group in Wichita. I think there's a fairly big one, but you just don't see them much because they're kind of out in using courses that are already set up in those series that have been around for a while. And I think having something here would grow that pretty quickly. So
Room to grow. Good. One more question. I just want to make sure that in phase one or step one, we are just trimming trees and not actually taking them
yes,
out.
yeah. So really throughout this whole area here, there's plenty of areas throughout the trees that you can get more than adequate width for the track. So it would just be, a lot of it's overgrown, but yeah, definitely don't need to touch any trees at all. So, yeah.
Troy, I have one question for you. Have we contacted South City Neighborhood Association? Because we're gonna go from basically it being quiet all the time and kind of vacant to, if he has a tournament, it's gonna change everything. And since it sits at the end of the neighborhood,
So we have not had a chance to talk to them yet. I think that would be something we'd want to go through the DAB, and that would be something we want to continue doing with continued communication with the neighborhood. So what's happening there now is we have ATVs, motorcycles, UTVs going crazy there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having this activity will push that out. Also will help us have more eyes and ears on the location. So I don't think it's going to be a major impact. They might have some races there. That would be great. And that would be 2 or 3 times a year, 4 or 5 times a year.
I'm supportive. I just want to make sure we notify, the neighborhood president, Dana, and let her know, say, hey, it's going to change, and, this is going to happen versus just,
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change much in regards to people being able to still walk through there and use that area as a green space. At times, they'll be riding there, but it's not like there's going to be every weekend a race there with 2,000 people. But we definitely would want to make sure they know about it and get their input. So I would suggest that we would take this to your DAB. So at least start, and then from there, if there's any neighborhood folks or specific HOAs that we need to talk to, then we do that as well. Yep.
That was gonna be my question about the ATVs and motocross. 'Cause I know at the canoe launch and at Pawnee Prairie, they're just trails all over the place at those. And if you develop your own trail, are they gonna already have ATV trails that run back and forth in between and everything?
The ATVs aren't legally there.
No, they're not.
Yeah, neither is the skateboard park that they put in there.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what their design is going to be, but hopefully they'll use existing trails and maximize those as much as they possibly can and using the landscape. So I don't see them, and obviously they're going to have to come up with some kind of plan to give to us to approve. We're not going to approve them building brand new trails and leaving the other trails vacant. So using what's already there, enhancing that to meet their needs.
Maybe some signage would help discourage some of the ATVs and other stuff.
And that's part of the plan too. And their sweat equity will help us make a lot of that happen. And if they go through this type of agreement, there's some things that we're going to put in the MOU that we expect, and they're willing to do that as well. So trading acreage, land for their interest and their opportunities to recreate comes at a cost, and there's a trade-off with that. And that's something we do quite often.
Further questions for our speaker or for staff? I think I might have missed, what is the, if you were to paint the sky blue, what's the total cost projection? I don't know if I caught that.
Honestly, to start, probably basically nothing, other than, yeah, just our labor and then any money that we're able to get through, like grants and stuff. Like REI had mentioned they were interested in helping with this. So from the Parks Department, I don't think we need anything. Yeah.
Well, no, that's certainly appealing. I mean, to make the case. So I mean, I just like right off the top. So great. I guess the question where I'm going with that is, I mean, I would be, especially, I think that might be a directive for you, is like reach out to REI, say you had this meeting. I would love to know if because clearly they're seeing this as a marketing opportunity for them, that they come buy your products here and we'll help put this, I mean, that'd be something I'd be interested. Let's talk about what does that look like? In much of the same way with, pickleball, how is it that we can, if we're going to be taking our park assets and saying we're going to change this for any particular reason, how can we maximize the attractiveness and the revenue potential for the city while speaking to the DAB, while speaking to the people in the neighborhood to make certain that it's in line with their expectations as well? Mm-hmm. So that'd be and so Troy, I guess the question I would have of you is like, what action do we need at this point?
So before we go that, Kim, I'm going to ask that you help us make sure we get the proper communication out there. Absolutely. What I would suggest is a recommendation from the board to move forward with this, and we could come back with more details once we get an MOU in place, and have you guys review the MOU as well.
All right, well, since this project would take place in District 3, I will pass over for the option for a motion to the commissioner from District 3.
Yeah, I make a motion we move forward with the recommendation.
Second. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. We are moving forward. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And so we will look forward to how we look at this in the future. This is going to be really interesting, I think. So thank you for being here.
And thank you very much for your time.
Great. All right. I just as a brief note, I would encourage everybody watching at home and everybody here, go to Google Maps. You can see this gorilla park here. You can zoom in on it. I'm just blown away. Do not do that, by the way. Don't do that. That's not saying. I mean, I'm impressed that they did it. I'm not saying it's a good thing. So anyway, but please take a look. Take a look in the future. Anyway, moving forward, we are now on to our last item of new business, and that is the Tobacco-Free Initiative presented by Shelley Rich.
Mr. President,
Yes, of course.
I need to leave.
Okay, of course. Thank you.
High school football.
Well, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, Commissioner. We will see you at our special meeting. Thank you so much.
Feel free to stand up and stretch while we're getting this situated.
All right.
Present team thing.
Are there any other weird, like, park things that we don't know about? Like people putting in, like pirate parks? This is news to me. Like,
There's a lot of activity going on in your park that is interesting.
okay, I think we need to have another special meeting perhaps about some of these, like,
I think that will be really nice for this area, as our people are very, with Bike Walk Wichita, I mean, they will be in this park using it all the time.
I think it sounds
And
neat.
have some good eyes on it.
I mean-
There's a lot of things going on, homeless encampments and stuff there right now.
Any way that we can increase usage of residents in our parks, I think it's generally, I'm gonna come down in favor of, especially if there's not a cost associated with it. I just think it's a really cool, I mean, I've been talking with folks for months now about activating our bike trails, especially along the river. I think this is a great, kind of trailhead, hopefully, if it's not already. I assume it is. So I'm very eager to see where we can go with this. This is cool. How are we doing over here?
We're ready.
Okay, the vamp is done. All right, thank
Okay,
you very much.
yes, thank
You go
you.
ahead and introduce yourselves.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners, and I also wanted to thank Troy Houtman for helping us make this presentation happen to you today. So our goal is to encourage the City of Wichita to move forward progressing with tobacco-free parks and trails. My name is Shelley Rich. I'm one of 2 tobacco control coordinators here in Sedgwick County, and I co-facilitate the Tobacco Free Wichita Coalition along with Kim Neufeld. I am joined by Tori Venata, who is a senior at Bishop Carroll High School. She is representing the Mayor's Youth Council today. And Resist is a youth-led statewide initiative that fights the tobacco industry's influence on Kansas teens, and that's an initiative that Tobacco Free Wichita has been working on improving in our community for many years. So I'm curious how many of you have heard of the Tobacco Free Wichita Coalition? Wonderful, thank you. So one of the oldest health coalitions in Kansas, our mission has been since 1970 to protect all residents of Wichita and Sedgwick County from the adverse effects of tobacco. I do want to recognize that we have 2 of our leadership team members in the audience, Aubrey and Alberto, so thank you for your dedication to our coalition. As you can see, our website is listed on this slide. We are also active on Facebook, and we have a newsletter. And so if you are also passionate about protecting the residents from the adverse effects of tobacco, I would encourage you to look into us and get involved. So a little bit of history of collaboration with the Tobacco Free Wichita Coalition and City of Wichita. In the 90s, the Youth Access Ordinance was adopted, and it has been updated several times to protect youth. The Clean Indoor Air Ordinance removed smoking from inside public spaces for the majority of businesses. That was a highly successful and supportive initiative community-wide. Smoke-free athletic fields have been in place for several decades here in our community with few issues. We have updated the tobacco retailer licensing to ensure funding for inspections and that vape shops are included. All city dog parks are posted smoke-free to protect our pets because, as you know, cigarette butts are toxic. And just for your information, a brief history with the Park Foundation, Park Board, this was presented pre-COVID. But through discussions with Troy, we felt that it was important to come back to the Park Foundation to present this again. So you all have in front of you a pair of sunglasses from our Play Healthy ICT initiative, and also a frequently asked questions document, which mentions the other communities in Kansas that have adopted smoke-free policies or ordinances. And so this list comes from a document from the Public Health Law Center's 2019 report about tobacco-free parks in Kansas. You will notice 2 ordinances in Sedgwick County and 1 policy in Valley Center, all of these from Sedgwick County. In Cheney, Danielle Young, our representative from Cheney, Kansas, shared that when their tobacco-free policy was posted on social media, they received an overwhelming positive response that it was passed in 2018. In Derby, city staff and the council recognized this as an emerging issue and wanted to be a progressive city by passing tobacco-free parks, which happened in 2019. Tobacco-Free Wichita can assist the City of Wichita with sample ordinance language and communicating with these other cities about best practices and lessons learned, including the fact that they had very few, if any, enforcement issues. I'd like to now turn to the National Recreation and Park Association. And they posted a position statement on tobacco consumption in parks, and they encourage all providers of park, recreation, and leisure service to maintain healthy, safe, and clean environments that are free from tobacco consumption and use, tobacco products, and the negative behaviors that worsen public health. They've done research on this, including a Park Pulse survey, which showed that nearly 4 in 5 Americans support policies that prohibit the use of tobacco products at public parks and facilities. So again, just to repeat, the NRPA supports the elimination of tobacco products at public places nationwide. In June of 2019, the National Recreation and Park Association released an article on e-cigarette use that was based on data from the CDC's National Youth Survey, indicating that e-cigarette use among high school youth had increased by 78%. The U.S. Surgeon General at that time declared vaping a youth epidemic and the NRPA encouraged city officials to establish tobacco-free park policies. So now I'd like to turn it over to Tori, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the dangers of tobacco-free parks and the benefits that Wichita could gain if passing this.
Yeah, so I'd just like to call to mention a 20-acre fire that occurred near Pawnee Prairie Park. In an interview, Fire Chief Pierman said that it was potentially man-made and that they're out there nearly half a dozen times a year because of man-made fires like these. And that's just one of the dangers of having tobacco in our parks and on our trails. Other dangers include children getting burnt if they pick up discarded cigarette butts. But it's not just a danger to our children, it's also a danger to our wildlife and to our earth, because cigarette litter takes around 10 to 15 years to fully break down. And our wildlife often mistake it for food and eat that, and that's very toxic for them. But there was an increase of teen tobacco usage with tobacco in our parks because they often like to hang out in parks and distribute it and share it, especially e-cigarettes like Juuls, Views, and Enjoy, stuff like that. So this ordinance will benefit Wichita because it creates a healthy space for children and families to get outside and get some fresh air. And if majority rules, 80% of Wichitans don't use tobacco, and so it would create a cleaner environment and a safe environment for families to get outside, which would also boost attendance in parks and in the parks events, which creates a healthier image for park visitors and reduces the risk of youth tobacco use because it's not allowed in parks, because it aligns parks with the school system and helps those trying to quit tobacco not get reintroduced into the temptation of having tobacco there. Now this is an environmental scan. It's one of the many things that Tobacco-Free Wichita does for our community. And this particular environmental scan was done at Sleepy Hollow Park, where each piece of cigarette litter was flagged and later is safely discarded. But in this photo alone and in this environmental scan, around 1,000 pieces of tobacco litter were flagged in just an hour. But as we can see, tobacco litter is definitely a citywide issue. Here we have Fairmount Park, Eastview, and O.J. Watson parks with a lot of orange flags, and it'd be great to keep our parks beautiful for many generations to come. Here we have districts 4 through 6 with Southview, Swanson, Riverside Central, and Sedgwick County parks. Riverside Central and Sedgwick County are definitely near and dear to my heart because I grew up going there, and it's just, we want to maintain that beauty for all the youth and make it an inclusive environment. So, I'd like to pass it over to Shelley.
Okay, I want to thank Tori for her involvement in this project. So I've gotten to know Tori through a volunteer project that we both engage in, and she is definitely a role model and very passionate about this issue. So thank you, Tori, for being here. So as a reminder, the Tobacco-Free Wichita Coalition has been working to promote tobacco-free parks and trails for decades in our community. This slide shows some of the partner organizations that we worked with and some of the events that we have attended. And I'll just say that most recently, we did an environmental scan and provided education at the Open Streets No Mar event in May. We also had residents sign a tobacco-free banner showing that their support for tobacco-free parks. So at this time, I'd like to turn it back over to you for questions and just let you know that I did provide my business card. If you have questions following the presentation, I would encourage you to reach out as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have questions for our speakers?
I know we looked at this a couple years ago, Troy, and we excluded golf courses, is that correct? And then we came to some sort of, if I'm remembering correctly, some sort of compromise. I think there's a 100-foot buffer between playground sets or...
So around playgrounds as well as ball fields, it's restricted.
And disc golf? I know in Oak Park where the disc golfers are, there's a lot of...
There is, yeah.
Well, those are left-handed cigarettes.
Is that what we're calling them?
Sure.
But we did have a concern in regards to golf courses because of an impact on revenue, and the expectation of a lot of golfers is to enjoy some type of tobacco along with their game of golf. So
I heard it helps.
Still not
well,
healthy.
I would use anything that would help me out, but we'll see.
Further questions? If not, I wanted to just ask a quick question. And first of all, say, Tori, thank you so much for being here today. It reminds me when I was a young ne'er-do-well lad at Capon, smoking a pack a day from my peer pressure friends. So I just wanted to say, as a former smoker, I appreciate you being here to speak on this issue. I wanted to also ask, is there a cost? I assume signage would be the major driver of cost. Has that been determined, the total cost?
It has not been determined. I will say that we can work with KDHE. They do provide some signage with a comprehensive policy. That's how the city of Cheney received their signage. Of course, we know that Wichita is much larger. And we discussed this with Troy and said that this will be something that we need to discuss moving forward.
Gotcha.
We've also looked at some grants for that. I think the Community Foundation had a little bit of interest in that as well. If we go down that road, there's a couple other folks that would willing to either through a grant or through just donation to help pay for that. So there's opportunities.
The one comment I did want to flag is that I think, as far as a cultural shift, I think this is something that most people would get behind, and I appreciate that. The one thing that did give me a little bit of concern that I just wanted to make certain I raised was I have the concern about criminalizing our parks. So I would hope that the intent and, in fact, the execution is education, not punishment. I think that's as far as compliance goes, and as far as folks feeling good about this change, I think that needs to be a core focus. Secondly, I think we just know it won't be, if we open a space that says, if you do not comply, you will have a run-in with our police department. If we can prevent those kind of situations as much as possible, make certain that you'll be asked to leave the park, say. If somebody wants to be busted for violating, I would imagine people who would probably get actually a ticket for this are getting in trouble for something else. And then on top of that, we're going to throw, and you smoked in the park while you were beating somebody up or something. I don't know, whatever the case may be. I just wanted to make certain I aired that concern.
Yes, and Tobacco-Free Wichita agrees with that. We are not wanting to punish and criminalize and get youth especially into the criminal system. I will say that when I talked to Derby and Cheney, they did not know of any tickets that had been written. They said that it's very well publicly policed with the signage.
Great.
So that would be our hope as well.
Great. Further questions? Any points of discussion that are not questions? Among the board, do we have any points of discussion here? So Troy, what do we say here? Where are we at?
So, from staff perspective, it's something that we support because a couple things. Health and wellness is one of our pillars and things that we always talk about. Anything we can do to promote health and wellness. But the biggest issue, and you saw all the red flags, literally red flags or orange flags, it is such a detriment to our parks. And it's, you know, we probably spend not enough time cleaning our parks, and this just makes it even more difficult. And so when I go to a lot of our parks, even some of the places next to our playgrounds where there shouldn't be any smoking, I see it there. So it's just one of the things that just really brings down the quality of our parks is cigarette butts all over the place, and they are out there. So that would be one of the things that I would see, and our staff would think that it's positive to go through this ordinance. So similar to what we had talked about in regards to pickleball, I don't think we make a decision today. I think it's, and this is something I think we want to do on a regular basis, is have presentations, educate the board, all the commissioners. We could come back next month, and if you guys have any other questions, we can answer those in between the time, or we can present those questions at the next meeting. But yeah, this is something that I think it's, from staff perspective, we support, and I think it's a good idea. But you might find otherwise. So let's take a month to answer any questions, and we can ask them to come back next month to be here available to answer any questions.
I think that sounds right. Does anybody on the board have any other thoughts and agree or disagree? With that, I would just say then, Troy, let's go ahead and plan for next month. There's no vote needed, so we will just take it under advisement, and we will look forward to continuing this discussion moving forward. Thank you very much for speaking today.
Thank you.
All right. So now with that, we are moving on to the continuation of prior business, which means we have one item of prior business, and that's going to be the Fairmont Park volleyball court naming with Daryl Carrington, who's coming before us again. So I would remind you, Daryl, appreciate all the information. Just we'll limit it to roughly about 5 minutes just to be respectful of everybody's time. I won't cut you off, but I would just ask that we try to keep respectful of that time limit request. So I will wait to let you go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I did follow up on your recommendation in my last visit here, which was I did get in contact with our local elected official, Mr. Brandon Johnson, and I'm going to share a quote with you. He says, sounds simple enough for him. Of course, he wasn't there helping us move the sand for the volleyball pit. And I have images of that. I sent them to Troy. Maybe we will get a chance to see our development on our volleyball court. We installed our benches. They're beautiful. These benches were a gift primarily from Wichita State University and the Fairmount Neighborhood Association. They're gorgeous. And of course, David McGuire provided the sand for us, and we've got some signage on our softball backdrop and that celebrates what's happening tomorrow. So tomorrow, we're celebrating a National Night Out, along with neighborhoods around the country, where we're gathering with our community police officers and celebrating our civil servants and the communities that they serve. So I just wanted to invite all of you. We probably have one of the nicer events out of all the events in the park, and if you have a chance, come by tomorrow and look at our new volleyball court and enjoy hot dogs and camaraderie. Again, if I talked to your IT guy here, and they said in order for me to share those images, I would have to send them to Troy. I sent them to Troy. I don't know how to get them on screen. But again, they're just images of what we've done since the last time we've met with you.
When did you send them?
I sent them today.
Oh, no.
To your, okay. Well, normally I would just use my flash drive, but I was told that that wasn't a good thing. So
We could do that.
Okay.
Do you have your flash drive with you?
I do not. So you'll have to come and see it yourself. But they're beautiful. I was just mentioning the benches, Troy, that we put together, and the banners on the backstop of our softball diamond. They're gorgeous. Upon my last visit, my charge was to return with justification to justify the memorial application, and that's duly noted. Our goal to name the volleyball court the historic Fairmount Park Jim Erickson Memorial Volleyball Court. That's our goal. In my former life, my charge as a Wichita State University community liaison under the Bardot administration with the Hugo Wall School of Public Policy. Basically that was a civic and civil engineering charge. And I can tell you that Dr. Jim Erickson, acted on bridge building. As an English literature professor, and literature being communication, we did a lot of that on the volleyball court. My family are transplants, and we've been here for about 15 years. Dr. Erickson has a 47-year history of excavating and codifying and building on a foundation he created using volleyball as a common denominator. Who among us cannot appreciate the culture bridge that is developed when members of the academic community and the resident community come together and play volleyball? Imagine for yourselves literal leveling the playing field on a volleyball court. In his brilliance, Dr. Erickson knew that bringing the two communities together would be mutually benefited. In Dr. Erickson's later years, at 80, his philanthropic endeavor included building libraries in the Fairmount community. Not only at Wichita State, but Fairmount has an organization called the Fairmount Go Zones. GO is an acronym for good options and great opportunities. The zone is Fairmount, and Dr. Erickson provided libraries for that group. Again, I had the wonderful opportunity to engage Dr. Erickson in his later years, and we feel as a neighborhood association that paying tribute to his 50-year service in the community would be an appropriate thing. I believe it's a matter of signage that we're asking we're asking the City Council to consider. And of course, we're asking you to vote on a recommendation today. Thank you. And I think I did that under 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your statements. Do we have any questions for our speaker? Okay. Okay. Seeing none, do we have questions for staff?
The staff's proposal, I mean, that's, or recommendation to us.
So I think I shared it last time, and Daryl makes a very great point, and he is bringing somebody who is very prominent from the community. But from my perspective, from all the different namings that I've done, whether it's been a swimming pool for McAfee, or whether it's been Brewer for a recreation center, these are folks that have been pillars of the community and done some really, really outstanding work and very well known. I don't think this rises to that level. That's just my perspective from staff, and there are other alternatives. I did get your text in regards to the benches, concrete benches with wood across. That looks great. Not necessarily our standard, but that's something that we would be willing to work with. We've done memorial benches and memorial trees for this kind of a situation. And that would be my suggestion, is that even though Daryl has already put in some benches, we do have a standard bench that we typically put in for memorial benches. And on there's a plaque. That would be my suggestion. Because I think this gentleman is very deserving, but maybe not at the level of what we've done in regards to some of these other namings that we've done.
So Daryl, I have a quick question. When you say that you have the support of the neighborhood association, could I count that as, if I were to ask the members of the neighborhood association, do you support this initiative of renaming the volleyball court? They would say yes, that the neighborhood association is on board.
Of course.
Okay, and so you've reached out to the city councilman, Brandon Johnson.
Yes.
Yes, you have. And he has replied in the affirmative that he'd be open to such a suggestion, so.
Yes, in fact, his quote is, "Sounds simple enough."
Gotcha. So look, I am generally hesitant to go against staff recommendation just because I trust staff when they give me reasons for things. I would like to know, Troy, if we were to vote in the affirmative and city council were to vote in the affirmative and they wanted to put forward a new signage, I would assume it would be signage that would be the cost associated. How much does that cost to put in a sign?
We probably want to use something that's pretty significant, similar to what our park ID signs are, the big wooden signs that you've seen identifying each one of those parks. This probably costs, with installation, I can't tell you exactly, but between $800 and $1,000 probably. So.
Gotcha. I mean, are you open, Daryl, to the idea that the sign be a different kind of sign? Is there an idea you have in mind of what the sign would look like? Is there any particular, I mean, is it just the idea of naming the volleyball court?
Well, thanks for the question.
Yeah.
And of course, we would appreciate just about anything.
Got it.
You know, what Troy just described is over the top as far as I was concerned. Yes. I think I answered your question. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we would appreciate anything that would memorialize this wonderful servant.
Got it.
So in regards to signage, what we want to do is keep our signage consistent, because we don't want to have a situation where we have a different sign in this park and a different sign in that park. And once we go down this road, it opens up the doors for just about anybody to nominate anybody for just about anything. So, not that they're not deserving. I just want to make sure that that's clear. But and ultimately, it's not staff's decision. It's something that we present to council, and they would have to make that recommendation.
Right,
as well.
right. And what my perspective is like, look, clearly there's interest in this. I would like to, if the community is interested in getting behind something like this, I think maybe it's worthy of having a discussion with the council member about how we can get this funded potentially if this were to move forward at the council. But I'm interested in hearing from I'll just tell you, I'm supportive of the idea of this advancing to council. I hesitate to overrule the recommendations of staff, but considering that the council member has made his support known, considering that he's answered the objections I've had so far. I have no reason to oppose it. So that is where I stand. I would like to hear from my fellow commissioners what their opinion is, and if they have other thoughts that may agree or disagree with what I've just said.
Does Councilmember Johnson know the finances behind, how closely has he looked at this?
I'm not really too sure. I mentioned it to him as well. I didn't get a commitment one way or the other from him. So yeah, I have no idea.
I would just say that I'm sure he was a very delightful individual, but and this is to me is an operational function, and this belongs to the director and his staff. And so therefore, I'm going to go with Troy on this, and I'm great with us having a park bench or a tree, some kind of small signage that goes along with that. But I believe this belongs in Troy's Department of Operations.
Further discussion? Okay. Like I said, I made my intention clear, so I will go ahead and make the motion. Let's see if a second. I don't know how the rest of the board will go. I will go ahead and make the motion that we accept the recommendation to move forward on the renaming of the volleyball court, depending on the support of council.
I'm sorry, Chris. It's not a renaming because, the volleyball court, I've been in the neighborhood for 15 years. The volleyball court has been dormant. The only usage of the volleyball court were the neighborhood cats.
Got it.
Until we cleaned it up, and so now it's resurrected.
Yes, sure.
And we want it. We take pride, obviously, as many people do. The park is the center of our community. And actually, Dr. Erickson used to live right across the street from where the park is. And so
definitely appreciate.
So it's not a renaming. This is brand new.
A naming, yes. I appreciate that. So let the motion be reflected as a naming, not a renaming. And so I will see. Do I have a second on that motion? Do I have a second on that motion? Do I have a second on that motion? Seeing lack of a second, I'm sorry, sir, that motion does fail.
That's okay. I gave it a shot.
I understand.
I really appreciate your time with me. This is my third time coming up, and it's been exciting. I'm a nerd when it comes to parks, and so I've had a good time coming to these meetings. Thank you.
Really appreciate you coming to these meetings. Your presentations have been very valuable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
And we will be working with you in regards to, if you're interested, a park bench of some sorts with a plaque.
I'm very much interested, Troy.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again. All right. Let's try to be mindful of the time. I mean, Troy, can we just take a quick second? I mean, we're running pretty extra here. So is there anything that we can kind of, can any of these be sent over via email? What are the things that we could maybe focus on that are the major highlights? I just want to make certain we're being respectful of everybody's time today.
So communication, I really don't have any updates on that. Social media, we're going gangbusters. Katie Heck was going to do a great presentation, but I can assure you that our social media is going gangbusters.
I can tell, by the way. I wanted to actually say that specifically I've noticed the uptick from the outside. It's noticed. So congratulations.
Recreation, Reggie's not doing anything. He's been really looking for more things to do. So if you guys really,
We give you permission to slap him.
on the contrary, we're finishing up summer. It's been a hugely successful summer, very busy, filled with COVID as well. Our lifeguard situation got kind of dicey there for a minute because we thought we were going to have to close some pools because we didn't have enough staff due to COVID for some of the lifeguards. But we've changed our aquatics director. Brian Hill has left us, but Joe has done an outstanding job. All of our summer camps have gone great. This morning we had our staff meeting. We're already talking about fall. We're already talking about winter programming. And the next big event that we're doing is Open Streets. So
great.
Yeah. Golf updates.
Thank you, Reggie.
Yeah, Reggie's doing a great job. So now we have Jesse. He was gone for 2.5 weeks, or let's see, 14, I don't know, 19 days, I was counting, I think.
It's like half an afternoon.
He was in Greece, having a great time, and now he's back. So he's got his checklist of things that he's gonna be working on. Without going into a whole bunch of detail, our month of July numbers were pretty good. We did have a couple strange dips, but overall, the golf system is doing well, and now we have some leadership here that's gonna help us get some things taken care of.
Just because this is the first full month that he's been here, I just wanted to make certain I asked the board, do we have any specific questions on the golf system that we would like to ask of our director?
Not necessarily a question, but just kind of what I've been hearing from the golf community. Had a conversation with somebody yesterday. They said that they played sim, but they had to book it like 7 days in advance. So golf is going gangbusters, like you said. One thing that I would caution, the heat outside, letting the golf carts on 90 degrees, essentially. Be very careful with that. And the fairways, they're pretty burnt up. So I know you know that, but I'm seeing other country clubs and golf courses on the paths when it gets over 100 degrees. So
one of the things I also want to give an update on, and Jesse probably was going to talk about this, all of our full-time positions have been filled. So that was huge, huge, huge. Now we need to make some evaluations to see how much more staff we need. So that's going to be something we're going to be working on. And then over at McDonald, we're on the final stages of making the improvements to the pond. They've already done the bridge and some other concrete work, and it's fantastic. It's been a difficult project because it's taken so long, but I think it's going to have a huge impact because it's going to save us a lot of water in the long run. So golf is doing good. It's going to get a whole lot better.
That's tremendous. It sounds like it. I just wanted to, the things I wanted to flag really quick, I don't know if you wanted to get up and answer. If this is a simple answer, I'm sorry guys, just two really quick points I'd like you to respond to. I'm noticing tremendous numbers from food and beverage. I'd like you to speak on that, where you see that coming from. Like, I'm blown away by how much food and beverage we're doing.
Sure.
Number two, merch.
Okay.
I want to hear about both those things.
Yeah, the food and beverage, when I ran this report, I actually did it about 4 times on the food and beverage because I thought I was making a mistake, and then I had someone verify because we have doubled food and beverage up to this point last year. I think the reason is just we have so much volume at the courses. Even if you go back historically, last year we had the volume, but we were limited, I think, with what we were offering because of COVID. We weren't running at full capacity. I wasn't here, but that's what I understand. So if you go back to 2018-19, we didn't quite have the volume of rounds that we have now. So we're capitalizing on all the traffic that's coming through our door, which is great. With food and beverage, there's a huge opportunity still, even with the numbers being as good as they are, to dramatically increase. And this is a perfect segue to introduce you to our new food and beverage manager, Kevin Bishop, who is here with us. He's on his 3rd week, I believe. We've spent a lot of time at the courses last week just kind of looking at ways we can improve. And I mean, the offerings are so limited right now to hit the numbers that we are shows me that if we make those changes, we could really blow it out of the water. And offer the guests the things that they want when they come to our courses. So that's very exciting. And then you said on the merchandise, I think kind of the same thing. We're up about $56,000 overall from last year. The only course that is down is McDonald. They were not using the pro shop. They were running all the operations from the food and beverage counter. So for most of this year, they weren't. They didn't really have a pro shop, so to speak. And Keith is getting ready to retire the very beginning of next year. So with them owning the shop, he's not going to invest a ton of money right now. So I think that's the reason for that number to be down. But the other areas, you see Sim, Colin has built up his pro shop. He's up 61% there. And just overall, it's just the volume of people that we have coming through the door, and we're doing a good job of capitalizing it. We can always do a lot better. We've got a lot of plans to do much better.
Troy?
A couple more things. So back in 19 and going into 20, discussion about selling one of the golf courses, then talking about management, company coming in. Our golf pros didn't want to get stuck with a lot of inventory, so we did not buy a lot of inventory, which meant that we weren't selling a lot of inventory. So once we were able to make the decision of what we're going to do, and we did that back in January, going into February, made a huge impact. Took away a lot of the uncertainty, gave us direction, gave us purpose. Therefore, the golf pros were able to start moving forward with merchandise. Colin was not selling a whole lot of merchandise because he was not a golf pro and he was not under contract at that time to sell. And so it was no benefit to him to sell. Now he is a golf pro, he has a contract now, and now it benefits him to sell. So all this is because we made some kind of decision on what we're going to do with management. So that was a huge part of that, as well as inventory with the food. The other part of that with the food is we're so glad Kevin's here because now we have a little bit more of a direction of how we're going to sell food, what kind of food we're going to sell. You know, we wanted to try some things, but we didn't have the internal direction. I couldn't spend all my time with golf, and now that we have somebody here, Jesse, that leadership is going to help. So those are some other things that I just want to make sure that you guys saw that was crystal clear that whatever the direction was with golf management, we just wanted to get to some kind of decision. And now that we have a decision, we can formulate plans. So that's one of the impacts.
Kevin, do you want to share some of your ideas that you've come up with in the first few weeks? I mean, are we going to have the best Bloody Marys in the state?
No, because we don't have liquor licenses on the golf courses. We have cereal malt beverage, but we're looking at it for maybe Auburn Hills or something, is upgrading to a liquor license. But there's a lot of work to be done, kind of moving kitchens around. They're not practical right now.
Sure.
Just they need to be a little more functional so we can do a lot more food and better food and more house-made stuff. So.
And if I can add to that real quick, I think just changing the environment of the clubhouse and making them way more inviting, where when you get done playing golf, you want to stick around and have a drink and have a meal. I think that's step one.
How many times did that come up during this process? Yeah.
I mean, I put myself right now, if I come off the course and I walk through the clubhouse, I'm gonna walk straight through the other door and go somewhere else and have a meal or a drink. And we need to provide the atmosphere that the folks want to stay and do that with us.
To hear it.
Yep.
Good.
Do we have further questions for along the board? Is there anything, Jesse, again, thank you so much for being here. Sorry that this meeting has taken so long. If you have any do you have anything that you think we need to know out of here? I know you prepared this and there's all kinds of good stuff coming, I'm sure. We're just kind of dragging here today.
There is, yeah, I'm kind of in the information gathering stage right now on a lot of different things. So I think if you don't mind, let me put some more stuff together for maybe next meeting. I can give a little more detailed report. And
well, you know, I think at least from my perspective, and I think I echo Commissioner Feinstock, that I'm interested to hear. Like, it sounds like we're in a season, in a fat season. So this is the time to start planning for. If you really want to knock it out of the park, I think you guys have the mandate from your customer base saying, let's go. So I'm really excited to see this. I'm really happy to have you here. And you have, certainly, I know, speak for myself, and I'm sure the whole board, that you have our full support. So
I appreciate that. And I will say the feedback I've gotten from our guests and our customers has been really positive. Is just from, I think there's a new energy, I think, the new excitement that they know that we are going to start making some changes and do the things that they're asking for that we can, and just improve all around. And I've gotten a ton of feedback from customers in a very positive way. So, we need to take that energy and use it.
Love it.
Come through.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to share that the Golf Enterprise Fund is doing well. And at the end of last year, I think we were looking at $1 million in the bank. Right now, I think we're closer to 1.5. And if we finish off August, September, and October, like we did last year, we'll be doing very well to have some money in the bank to put reinvestment back into the golf courses. So that's what Jesse is going to be doing. I'm not going to give him a blank check, but
I heard 1.5 million.
There you go.
But there's a lot of things we can do. And there's going to be a lot of little things that will make incremental differences, but there's other things that can make huge impacts as well. Also want to remind you all that the Golf Advisory Committee has been decommissioned, and so one of the things that I've asked Jesse to do is make some recommendations from each one of the golf courses. There's going to be one representative from each one of the golf courses. It's going to be much different than what we've done in the past, where there was a representative by geographic location or by district or by commissioner. And that Golf Governance Committee is going to report directly to council. And they have been charged with a lot of duties. They're going to have a lot more authority than the Golf Advisory Committee did. They're going to have a lot more work to do as well. So that's kind of exciting and a little bit different as well.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm looking at the rest of the agenda today. Troy, do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to keep us aware of? Anything else that we need to know? Any plans for your trip in Mexico you'd like to share with us?
He doesn't need to rub that in.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Good to know. Okay, well, we will be here
Yes,
in
you
2
will.
weeks while you will be luxuriating in Cozumel.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to be leaving that Monday morning, and I'll be coming back the following Tuesday. I didn't plan it that way. I had no idea you guys were going to be wanting an extra meeting, or else
sure,
I would change my plans.
Sure.
But I did. Yeah, I'm not going to be looking at my cell phone. I'll tell you
Okay.
that right
Well,
now.
I know we're going to have a very productive discussion. I'm certain regardless, because staff always gets it done, so.
I do want to share that end of September, right after Open Streets, contingent of staff, I think there's going to be 9 or 10 of us are going to our national conference in Phoenix, and we'll be going to the gold medal ceremony. We'll see if we this year win the gold medal, so I'm pretty excited about that. But staff has been recognized over and over again for all the great work that they do, and I can never talk enough about how good our staff does. And I appreciate your all support on social media and going to some of the special events that we're doing. There's a lot going on. There is a lot. We had baseball at Garvey Park. We were showing the Wind Surge. We had Encanto, which is a great movie. We had that last week on Thursday. There was a ton of people there. Those are just a couple examples of lots and lots of things. And we're doing more and more partnerships. We're talking to different folks about a lot of different things that we're doing. There's just a lot going on.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I don't have a president's update, so I think I'll just say to everybody here and everybody watching along at YouTube, hope to see you in 2 weeks from today for our special meeting on pickleball and tennis. But other than that, folks, take care of yourselves and each other. Our meeting is adjourned.